Year 2121, also known as the Wasteland era, the time when humanity pressed the nuclear war button and accidentally turned the entire planet into a radioactive survival simulator. Cities got erased, ecosystems mutated, and every bug that used to die under a slipper evolved into something that could legally qualify as a boss fight. In this lovely new world, stepping outside your settlement without a plan is basically submitting a job application to get eaten. But our boy Liu Xing, he treats this nightmare like a daily commute. While everyone else is hiding behind walls praying they don't become lunch, Liu Xing is out here riding a bike through the wasteland, casually slicing nuclear monsters like he's late for work. Because Liu Xing isn't just some random survivor, he's a scavenger, the kind of professional who gets paid to hunt monsters. But here's where things get interesting. Liu Xing has a secret ability that basically breaks reality. When he sleeps, he doesn't just dream, he travels to another world, a terrifying cultivation realm full of demons, immortal sects, cursed spirits, and enough evil energy to give the apocalypse a run for its money. And somehow, Liu Xing ends up becoming the sect master of an ancient immortal faction that's been sealed for 1,000 years. Now he's playing 2 survival games at once. In one world, he hunts nuclear beasts for crystals. In the other, he uses those crystals as spiritual energy to revive ancient demon disciples and rebuild a legendary cultivation sect. After the impromptu bug-slaying session, Liu Xing eventually pulled up in front of what appeared to be his destination, a location noted on a chit someone had handed him earlier. He looked at the chit, looked at the building, and arrived at the highly scientific conclusion, that's probably the house. Then, a well-fed gentleman emerged from a car parked nearby. They made eye contact. Liu Xing, with zero hesitation and zero explanation, immediately stripped the man of his clothes, tied him up in rope, stuffed a cloth in his mouth, and locked him, very naked, in the back of his own car. Liu Xing then put on the man's clothes and walked toward the entrance. Was this a plan? Apparently yes. His welcome committee, however, was not impressed. The moment he stepped in, a gun was pointed at his head and a blade kissed his neck. 2 girls, clearly not in the business of casual greetings, had opinions about his presence. The first asked, gun aimed, whether he'd perhaps wandered to the wrong address. The second, blade steady, informed him this was private territory and that one more step forward would result in him being sent off, a phrase that needed no clarification. Liu Xing, cool as ever, reached into his pocket and produced a badge. The effect was immediate. The first girl identified him as a distinguished SVIP guest. Liu Xing confirmed he'd come specifically to have fun and would appreciate if they didn't ruin it. The second girl welcomed him to Wasteland Eden and stepped aside. The first pressed a button, called him an esteemed guest, and both bowed as Liu Xing strolled in and the door sealed shut behind him. Wasteland Eden, it turned out, was an underground club that had recently exploded in popularity, and for reasons that were not exactly wholesome. Its clientele consisted of regional overlords and upper-class dignitaries. What drew them were the special services. An announcer took the stage, enthusiastic, loud, very committed to the bit, and declared the night's selection assembly officially open. She announced that money was the only language spoken here, and that those with enough of it would experience what she called ultimate pleasure. The cloth coverings were pulled off a row of glass boxes. Inside each one, a captive girl. The crowd reacted with the enthusiasm of people who had thoroughly lost the plot. The announcer pulled forward one girl, chained at the neck, and described the products on offer as meticulously selected, pure quality guaranteed, the kind of joy only a god deserves. The bidding could begin. Liu Xing watched this from the back, expression unreadable. The so-called special service was plainly an illegal slave auction, mostly of young women, sold to the highest bidder. With the surviving population already scarce, human trafficking was a serious crime, which was exactly why all of this was happening underground, quietly, and with very expensive badges required for entry. But that, apparently, wasn't even the main event. A woman approached Liu Xing as he observed from the back. Noting he seemed uninterested in the current offerings, Liu Xing replied that they were second-rate goods, boring. He wanted something more exciting. She smiled and said their guest had taste. There were in fact more exciting options, but to access the top-grade selection, one needed to be a supreme member. She noticed the bracelet on Liu Xing's wrist. Her entire demeanor shifted. She turned, apologized for failing to recognize his status, and asked him to follow her upstairs. Upstairs, a door opened. A girl was waiting, barely dressed. She introduced herself as Yumi, cheerfully noting she was here and ready. The woman accompanying Liu Xing introduced her as a high-grade acquisition and asked for his opinion. Liu Xing looked, considered, and said, "Not bad." Then he glanced at the woman, who took her cue, excused herself, and left them to it. Liu Xing remarked, with the energy of someone who had just found a good deal at a very illegal market, that he had indeed encountered top-grade goods this time. The girl with fox ears, because 2121 had committed fully to being strange, looked up at Liu Xing and told him that from this moment forward, she was his exclusive pet, his to do with as he pleased. Little Kitty made a very bad decision. Slug Sang stepped closer to Yumi and, completely deadpan, asked her to clarify exactly which kind of thing she was referring to. Yumi, absolutely delighted, called him bad twice for emphasis, and then made her arms rise in a dramatic flourish. She pointed out that they were already there, so the pretending could stop, and proceeded to pull Liu Xing down onto the bed. She began using what could only be described as her illusion abilities, demonstrating this kind of thing with full theatrical commitment. Lu Xing, lying there, assessed the situation and declared it rather ordinary. Yuami pivoted instantly. She asked if Master preferred when she took more initiative, flipped the dynamic, repositioned herself above him, and assured him that little Kitty would be very obedient. She offered generously that if she wasn't obedient enough, Master was welcome to use a whip. Lu Xing asked plainly if she liked eating the whip. She leaned in close and confirmed that yes, only little Kitty, specifically little Kitty, liked eating Master's whip. She moved to kiss him. Lu Xing shoved her away. He produced an actual whip from where, unclear, said good, told her to take a proper taste of it, and spanked her with it. Yuami was not having a good time. Trembling, she demanded to know why he'd hit her, and pointed out, reasonably, that if she was broken she couldn't serve him anymore. Lu Yuang was unmoved. He noted she couldn't handle a single lash, and reminded her that beastmen were supposed to have fairly tough bodies. He added cheerfully that as long as her head wasn't completely smashed, she'd probably survive. Miss Beastman. Yuami's eyes went cold. She asked, internally, how he knew. Out loud, she demanded to know if he was a scavenger. Lu Yuang responded that scavengers were apparently not allowed to spend money at premium establishments, which seemed like a strange policy. He then calmly explained that while her disguise was genuinely impressive, beastmen could never fully complete the transformation. Appearance could be replicated, scent and body temperature could not. Yuami recovered quickly, smiled, and insisted she was still there to serve him very well. As she moved her arms behind him, her hands quietly shifting into mantis claws, she assured him she just wanted to make Master comfortable, and asked sweetly that he not bully her. The next moment, Lu Yuang threw her across the room with his hip. As she fell, she transformed, lower body, upper body, all of it, into full mantis form, arms and legs and everything, and managed to catch herself before hitting the ground. Her disguise was entirely gone now. She demanded to know who he was, and why his weapon had broken her illusion. She ran the numbers internally. He looked young, probably just a scavenger, so why did he have something like that? Lu Xing said he was just an ordinary scavenger who had accepted a job. The job required cleaning all of them up. He then, generously, challenged her to call her companions, telling her to hurry up, promising he'd give her the chance, and noting that if they all attacked together it would save everyone time. Yuami screamed in her own language. Her internal reasoning was sound. She was no match for him alone. Together was a different story. Several women burst through the door, armed. The first looked at the situation and was deeply unimpressed. She'd expected a tough nut and instead found a kid. The second told Yuami to relax. Her sisters were here to share the burden. Yuami, now entirely in beast form, told them not to be careless. This one was a scavenger. One of the women fully transformed and declared that if he was a scavenger, guns were pointless. Time to put everything on the table. They all began shifting into their monster forms. The commentary continued. One noted that scavengers who'd caused trouble before hadn't been a match for them either. Another pointed out he was alone, looked like a complete greenhorn, and frankly wasn't enough for all of them to share. A third said to make it quick, there was a big fish betting outside. The last one agreed, adding that even high-level threats might not get an advantage against them as a group, so this kid was basically already handled. They all lunged at Lu Xing simultaneously. Lu Xing looked at the incoming pile of monsters and said that honestly everyone attacking together really did make things easier for him. As every beast in the room launched themselves at Lu Xing at once, he calmly pulled out a talisman, applied it to his whip, and proceeded to spank every single one of them on the rear end with it. Each one took a serious thunder strike to the backside and hit the floor. One of them, recovering from the indignity of being electrocuted through her own buttocks, asked if he was actually a new human rather than a scavenger, since scavengers didn't typically do that. She admitted, mostly to herself, that she'd been careless. Lu Xing turned around and corrected her. What he'd used wasn't a special ability, it was an item. He then did brief mental accounting. 1 lightning talisman spent, 5 beastmen handled. He concluded with complete satisfaction that the deal was worth it. Shortly after Lu Xing had left, someone walked in, took one look at the situation, and identified the bodies as beastmen, specifically, a group that had reportedly been secretly abusing and eating humans. The people still inside saw the bodies, connected the dots, and immediately started screaming about beastmen eating people before evacuating at speed. Which fair. As it turned out, intelligence had flagged exactly this group. They hadn't just been capturing lone human girls and providing deeply indecent services to paying customers. They'd also been quietly snacking on some of those same customers on the side. Beastmen operated on an entirely different evolutionary level than standard nuclear beasts. They could mimic human appearance almost perfectly, and their intelligence was fully comparable to humans, which made malicious beastmen significantly more dangerous than anything that was just teeth and instinct. This group had been caught in one go. Liu Xing introduced himself to the room. His name was Liu Xing. He was a scavenger. He'd received a commission to eliminate the beastmen operating in this location, and he'd done exactly that. He picked up an orb and noted, privately, that the 5 nuclear cores he'd just acquired were an even better return than the mission reward itself. Good day overall. For context, scavengers were a recognized profession in this world. They accepted mission commissions, completed them, collected rewards, and were managed by the Scavengers Guild, which was responsible for keeping various threats in check. Most scavengers were new humans, people who had received the same nuclear energy exposure that turned animals into beasts, but instead of becoming monsters, had awakened abilities and significantly improved physical capabilities. Different gift, same source. Liu Xing was one of them. Though, as he just demonstrated, the talisman wasn't his own ability. His actual special ability was, by his own description, rather unusual. Brief life summary, delivered by Liu Xing to no one in particular. His name was Liu Xing, orphan. Early survival strategy, try to join factions. Result, getting beaten daily without pause. This continued until he met the person he credited as his savior, his scavenger team captain, Xia Wu. She identified that he had a special constitution, brought him onto the team she'd built, the Twin Leopards, and from that point on, his singular goal was to survive the apocalypse and become a stronger scavenger. He drove on through the wasteland state of Jindo. Scavenger ability rankings, for reference, ran from D rank at the bottom up through C, B, A, and S at the top. Liu Xing had trained hard and reached the middle stage of C rank, which was progress, but still left a significant gap between him and the A and S rank operators, with powerful abilities and top-tier equipment. He had, however, found a different path to closing that gap. The weapons he carried, items that didn't belong to this world, had already let him take down multiple beastmen at once. The source of those weapons was directly tied to his special ability as a new human. He found a hidden room, went inside, and closed the door. He lay down, closed his eyes, and fell asleep. And then he traveled to another world entirely. This was his special ability. The world he arrived in was nothing like the apocalypse. It was the immortal, refining, strange realm, a place filled with demons, spirits, ghosts, and things that defied easy categorization. The air carried a permanent aura of death and dread. Danger level, comparable to the apocalypse. Key difference, in this realm, one could cultivate immortality. When he arrived, a little girl appeared in front of him immediately, visibly relieved, and addressed him as Sick Master, which was apparently his title there. She told him he was finally awake. Liu Xing, as Sick Master, informed her that the mission on the other side had been completed. They'd collected quite a few materials, which meant they could now activate several more of the shrine's functional modules. Business as usual. 2 worlds, 1 schedule. Liu Xing stepped out of the palace and took a moment to process his existence. 1 second he was asleep on a patch of ground. Next second he was standing somewhere with an entirely different aesthetic. He walked, holding a pouch, and reflected that every time this happened, it felt at least a little unbelievable. To explain why it happened, he had to go back a few months. It had started like any other day. He'd fallen asleep at his old place as usual. When he opened his eyes, he was inside someone else's body, standing on top of a pile of corpses in a completely different world. His first thought was that he was dreaming. Then the smell hit him. The pungent stench of actual decomposing bodies made it extremely clear this was not a dream, and Liu Xing responded to this revelation by vomiting repeatedly. Then things got stranger. His scavenger bracelet, which had come with him because apparently it was committed, scanned one of the corpses and calmly reported that the body appeared to be an ancient human, age unknown, cause of death suspected to be energy drainage. The bracelet was fine, Liu Xing was not. The world around him featured floating ancient buildings and strange thorns, the kind of scenery that looked lifted straight from the cultivation novels and old books he'd read back home. Except this version was more terrifying than any of those descriptions had managed. While he was still trying to figure out where he was, a headache arrived, and with the headache came something useful. The memories of the body's original owner began surfacing. Here was the situation as the memories explained it. The spiritual energy of this world had long been exhausted. In its place was a malevolent energy, the kind that drove people mad just by existing near it. Fueled by this energy, various demons and monsters roamed freely, leaving rivers of blood wherever they went. The cultivators who remained had, in response to the collapse of their world, adopted methods that were frankly horrifying. The original owner of this body had been a disciple of the soaring Ascension Sect. His role in the sect, along with every other ordinary disciple, was simple: excavate corpses daily, have no power to resist, submit completely. The sick master of the sect, who had the appearance of some kind of powerful creature, treated his disciples as livestock. He extracted their souls to fuel his own cultivation and called it a blessing. Disciples with even slight aptitude were used as ingredients in alchemy. Their flesh and blood went into refining a golden ascension pill. Corpses piled up. Talk of justice and saving people was just a cover story the cultivators used to obscure what they were actually doing. The original owner had died as part of this system. His soul extracted, his body discarded. Liu Xing, now occupying that body, absorbed all of this and thought, so he had transmigrated into someone else's soul. Then the headache intensified, delivering another memory. This one was from the original owner's childhood. An elder, old, clearly carrying the weight of better times, was telling the young boy about the world as it used to be. Back in the golden age of cultivation, he explained, masters were everywhere. Mahayana practitioners weren't rare. Tribulation transcendent cultivators were so common that spitting on the side of the road could hit 4 or 5 of them. The boy, appropriately amazed, said that sounded incredible. The elder confirmed it was more than incredible. In that golden age, even demons and evil spirits had wanted to join the righteous path. Great demon lords had pledged themselves to the #1 sect, the Heaven and Earth sect, to cultivate alongside immortals. The sect master had created a peerless technique for joint cultivation of immortals and demons. Everyone's cultivation rose, kindness flourished, the world was peaceful. Then the elder's tone shifted. The spiritual energy ran out. Malevolent energy flooded in. The heavens and earth tore apart. A catastrophic heavenly tribulation fell, destroying high-level cultivators through reversed meridians. The few who survived went into seclusion to protect themselves. The sick master of that era had used a forbidden secret technique to preserve the sect's core and bury it deep underground, thousands of feet down, sealed until a destined person could arrive to revive it, restore its spiritual root, and rescue what remained. That revival never came. The spiritual energy didn't return, and into the vacuum stepped a new generation of so-called cultivators who claimed to be restoring the glory of cultivation but were in practice demonic cultivators feeding on malevolent energy. Perhaps they had once walked the righteous path. In the dying age, unwilling to fade into obscurity, they had chosen a different road entirely. The world was now called the bizarre domain of immortal refining. Devouring souls and the essence blood of mortals had become standard practice. The elder finished by telling the child, his descendant, that their clan was the last of the Heaven and Earth sect's lineage. If he could one day awaken the sect, he had to ensure its cultivation methods were restored and that the demonic cultivators were stopped. Liu Xing processed all of this and concluded that this cultivation world was no less brutal than the post-apocalyptic one he'd come from. He also noted that the original owner had been captured and sacrificed before he could act on any of this, which meant the task of inheriting the family legacy had by default landed on him. The elder had also left specific instructions, resurfacing now through the memories. There was a map showing the village and the direction to the sect ruins. The sect was underground at a specific location. To open the entrance, one needed to bring the silver jade bracelet, knock a pattern of 1 long and 2 short sounds repeated 3 times, and recite an incantation. Liu Xing, walking through the area matching that description, found that the pile of abandoned corpses where he'd first woken up fit the elder's description best. He ran a scan. The bracelet reported a strong nuclear energy reaction between 500 and 1,000 meters underground. He stared at this information. His scavenger bracelet was built to detect nuclear energy in the post-apocalyptic world. He had not expected it to go off here. He began to suspect what this meant. He moved the corpses. Underneath them was a well. The silver jade bracelet began resonating. The scavenger bracelet confirmed the energy was coming from the bottom of the well. He started climbing down. The descent was long, at minimum thousands of steps. As he went deeper, the people buried down there had been eroded and assimilated by the malevolent energy, transforming into something called eclipse people, making every step an obstacle. The resonance grew stronger. The alarm frequency increased. He kept going. Finally, the bottom. The alarm was going wild. Something was in the hole in front of him. He looked. Hands came out of the dark. It was a giant skeleton monster in the shape of a centipede. Liu Xing's reaction to this was reasonably shock. Then he looked at its hand and remembered the instructions. He knocked the pattern. 1 long, 2 short, repeated 3 times, and recited the incantation. The 5 gods are with me, roaming the 4 directions with the gods of land and grain. To my left and right, thieves and robbers are subdued. Travelers will have joy and the weary will receive blessings. The 5 elements follow me, and all my wishes are granted. The skeleton began emitting energy. It dismantled, pieces tied together by what appeared to be rope, flying apart at speed, and a portal opened in front of him. Liu Xing concluded he'd been right. The monster wasn't just guarding the entrance, it was the entrance. He raised his hand, and the bracelet started glowing. Liu Xing stepped through the portal. The moment he entered, all the skulls outside reassembled themselves into vaguely person-shaped things, as if the entrance wanted to make absolutely sure it stayed unsettling. Inside was a statue with a countless number of hands, standing in an intensely cold hall. Liu Xing looked around and admitted to himself that despite having read cultivation novels before, he'd never really had a concrete image of what this world would actually look like. Seeing it in person was significantly more shocking than anything he'd imagined. His bracelet glowed red. Before he could process that, a spirit emerged from it, immediately used its power to alter the hall's atmosphere, and floated up to Liu Xing, addressing him as Sect Master, informing him that this little one had finally waited long enough and that the Heaven and Earth sect was saved. Liu Xing's primary response was to ask, did she just call him Sect Master? The little spirit girl, who referred to herself as Little Immortal, explained. The hall Liu Xing had entered was the core hall sealed away by the Heaven and Earth sect, the Immortal Refining Valley. Little Immortal was the spirit of the sect's protective formation, a wisp of a Little Immortal's spiritual consciousness that had been sealed inside the silver jade bracelet. Her main soul, along with the other sect members, remained sealed within the Immortal Refining Valley itself. Now that Liu Xing had arrived, the wisp of consciousness in the bracelet had been released. Liu Xing noted privately that the silver jade bracelet was apparently full of secrets he hadn't finished discovering yet. Little Immortal continued the history lesson. During the golden age of cultivation, the Sect Master had developed a method for joint immortal and demonic cultivation, allowing benevolent demons and cultivators to train together. When the malevolent energy began ravaging the land, corrupting demonic beasts and cultivators alike, wiping out any meaningful mortal resistance, the Sect Master had stepped in. According to Little Immortal, he had turned the tide with exactly 2 moves. The first, the spirit-cleansing mantra, described as the light of the righteous path, deploying a figure of energy so massive it compared to a mountain, delivering an endless sequence of strikes to the evil demons and wiping out the majority of them. The second, a terrifying technique using demons to fight demons, clearing out the remaining evil remnants. The Sect Master had commanded, "Great demon emperors, hear my command, drag all the evil demons back to hell." 2 moves. First wave of attacking evil demons, nearly annihilated, but the waves kept coming. Demonic cultivators and malevolent energy-corrupted beasts were effectively endless, and even a Sect Master of that caliber couldn't kill infinity. Eventually, he chose the last resort, sealing the immortal refining valley entirely, sacrificing his own soul and essence blood to activate the formation that buried the entire main hall underground. The souls of the disciples were preserved inside, falling into a deep slumber. A reluctant choice, but it left a glimmer of hope. The original owner's ancestor had been on an outside mission when it happened, and couldn't return in time. Instead, he received a decree from the Sect Master. The sect must strive for survival through the catastrophe, and when the time of immortal fate arrived, the immortal refining valley could be unsealed. The disciples led back to renewed glory. The ancestor had read the decree, passed the knowledge down, and now, with Little Immortal awakened, Lu Xing had become the Sect Master by default. His immediate task was clear: gather spiritual energy and channel it in. Only then could the immortal refining valley be opened and operated normally, allowing the path of joint immortal and demonic cultivation to begin, and his strength to grow. The problem, collecting spiritual energy in a world where it had been completely depleted, was impossible. The solution arrived courtesy of his scavenger bracelet, which had detected nuclear energy underground in a world where nuclear energy had no business existing. Lu Xing turned this over and arrived at a hypothesis: nuclear energy and spiritual energy might be interchangeable. If he could bring nuclear energy from the post-apocalyptic world into this one, he could supply enough to power the sect. And when it came to concentrated nuclear energy, nuclear crystals were the obvious choice. Nuclear contamination from the war had caused widespread animal evolution into nuclear beasts, and the nuclear contaminants inside those beasts condensed over time into nuclear crystals. If he could bring those crystals here, but could he even go back? Little Immortal appeared beside him, asking what was wrong. Lu Xing told her it was nothing. He just hadn't slept in a long time and was tired. He asked for somewhere to rest. She led the way without further questions. Lu Xing lay down on a bed and told Little Immortal to protect him while he slept. She accepted the command. He closed his eyes, noted that the tension he'd been carrying since arriving had finally released all at once, and felt a wave of drowsiness take over immediately. He woke up in his original body, back in the post-apocalyptic world. The silver jade bracelet had come with him. From this, Lu Xing drew 2 conclusions. First, sleeping was apparently the mechanism for traveling between the 2 worlds. Second, objects he was physically holding when he crossed over came with him, proven by both the scavenger bracelet and the silver jade bracelet making the trip successfully. Which meant, if he were holding nuclear crystals when he fell asleep, he could potentially bring them into the cultivation world. The interdimensional logistics were coming together. Lu Xing's hypothesis was immediately confirmed. He showed the nuclear crystal to Little Immortal and asked if it could be used. She reacted with genuine excitement, noting that the spiritual energy inside was as rich as a spirit stone. Lu Xing filed this away as confirmed. Anything he held while sleeping crossed over with him, and nuclear crystals could absolutely power the sect's revival. Little Immortal declared that with this much spiritual energy, they could activate the sect's most important divine artifact, the Rebirth Cauldron. Lu Xing asked what the Rebirth Cauldron did. Little Immortal introduced it with full ceremony. Heaven and earth reverse. The great Tao summons. The Cauldron of Life. The cauldron was brought out from the formation. She explained that although it had been sealed for 1,000 years, it could be reactivated simply by injecting spiritual energy. Back when the sect was sealed, the sect master had placed the souls of all disciples within the eternal soul candles inside the cauldron. Once the cauldron produced new physical bodies, the souls could enter them and the disciples would be resurrected. Given that the disciples were all highly skilled, their revival would put the sect's recovery well within reach. Lu Xing immediately asked why they were waiting. Little Immortal confirmed the current spiritual energy was sufficient to activate the divine artifact and produce exactly 1 physical body. She pulled out the nuclear crystals and loaded them into the cauldron. She also noted that which disciple got resurrected would depend entirely on luck. Ji-Hyun's eyes lit up. He said this was basically a blind box and announced he would return for a 10-pole once he'd collected more nuclear crystals. Little Immortal said she didn't quite understand what a 10-pole meant, but there was something she needed to remind him of first. The cauldron interrupted her. Little Immortal immediately warned Liu Xing to be careful. The newly formed body came flying out at speed. Liu Xing registered the velocity, thought that's fast, and caught it. It immediately began burning his hand. The cloth around his grip started to scorch. He was holding the newly resurrected girl by the neck, and she was on fire. Samadhi 2 fire, specifically. The girl demanded to know who he was and how he wasn't afraid of the flames covering her body. Then she saw the bracelet. She went very still and asked if he could possibly be. Little Immortal cut in and told the girl to stop stalling and pay her respects to the young Sect Master. Liu Xing welcomed her back to the world. The girl jumped back and ran her own internal assessment. The original Sect Master had exhausted his cultivation and scattered his soul, but this person had the silver jade bracelet, had opened the rebirth cauldron, and had reconstructed her body. Could he genuinely be the Sect Master's reincarnation? She decided she couldn't be careless and needed to test him first. She asked, with deliberate formality, for what purpose he had awakened her. Liu Xing said he wanted her to join in reviving the sect and restoring its former glory. She replied that if it was something that tedious, she had no interest in participating whatsoever. Little Immortal immediately launched herself at the girl's head and bit her, demanding to know how she dared be disrespectful to the Sect Master and threatening, at length, to make her regret it. The girl responded by punching Little Immortal directly into the ceiling with a single strike and a release of Samadhi 2 fire, shouting for her to get lost. She then delivered her personal philosophy. She had survived the golden age of cultivation, she had been resurrected, and in this life she would not be controlled by anyone. Her fate was her own. The heavens had no say in the matter. She attacked Liu Xing. Liu Xing used the green jade bracelet. It caught her instantly in chains and shackles that delivered a thunder shock. Little Immortal, recovering from the ceiling, asked when the young Sect Master had learned the soul-binding curse. Liu Xing said he'd made a calculated guess. The moment he'd entered the rebirth cauldron's range, the silver jade bracelet had started resonating, and in that resonance, he'd been able to see complex sealed souls, each one connected to the bracelet by a chain. He'd learned the origin of those souls from that connection, and from there the rest followed logically. Little Immortal took this as a cue to explain what the soul-binding curse actually meant. Sealing souls was a demonic secret art that only worked on demons, monsters, and spirits, which meant every disciple sealed in the cauldron was exactly that. Many of them had been demonic overlords who dominated their own territories before joining the sect. The only one they had ever feared was the Sect Master. Since the silver jade bracelet could link with their souls, Liu Xing concluded the bracelet itself was the trump card for controlling them. He had confirmed this by watching the chain from one of the eternal soul candles transfer into a new body during the resurrection. The bracelet was the key. Liu Xing noted mildly that he'd just given the bracelet a gentle pull and hadn't expected it to sort things out so efficiently. Little Immortal whispered in his ear that it was the soul-binding curse and suggested he use the moment to assert authority. She told the girl to report her name. The girl, now chained and freshly electrocuted, complied. Her name was Firecrow. Originally a fire spirit used for purging during artifact refinement, she had cultivated a human form over 100 years and been accepted as a disciple by the former Sect Master. She had been refined using Samadhi 2 fire. Little Immortal observed that she was basically just an artifact spirit who'd leveled up into a monster, and asked why she was acting so superior about it. Liu Xing told her that if she was going to occupy a perfectly good body and contribute nothing, they'd send her back and write off the nuclear crystals as a loss. Firecrow panicked immediately. She informed them, at speed, that she had once been a high-grade artifact used for refining pills, creating talismans, and forging magic treasures, and that said treasures had been sealed alongside her. She produced 3 items: a model iron forge, a bundle of Thunderlight talismans, and a young demon suppressant trait. She offered them all. Little Immortal made a face. Liu Xing made the same face. They both indicated, in unison, that this level of sincerity was insufficient and that it seemed they simply weren't meant to work together. Goodbye. Firecrow immediately abandoned all dignity and pledged that if given sufficient spiritual energy as material, she could refine talismans and magic treasures endlessly for the Sect Master. Little Immortal repeated the goodbye line. Firecrow escalated the pledge, guaranteeing the Sect Master would leave everyone behind on the path of treasure refinement. Liu Xing looked at her for a moment and said, "Fine. One chance." Back in the present, Liu Xing opened the door to where Firecrow had been sealed, held up a bag of nuclear crystals, and asked her directly whether the spiritual energy in there was enough. Firecrow looked at the nuclear crystals and told Liu Xing he was impressive. Finding something this rich in spiritual energy in a realm that barely had any chi left was no small feat. She thought privately that this new Sect Master clearly had something going on, though his general vibe didn't quite read as traditional Sect Master material. She stood up anyway, announced she finally had a chance to refine treasures again, activated her Samadhi fire, loaded the crystals into her molten fire treasure refining art, and shouted, "Activate." She noted that since the crystals were raw material rather than proper spirit stones, the results would be random. After the refinement, she produced the Azure Shadow Falcon Heaven Talisman and handed it over. Liu Xing examined it, deduced from the name that it probably triggered avian powers, and called it not bad, just a bit ordinary. He asked how to get better results next time. Firecrow said the answer was simply more spiritual energy input. The next attempt went bigger. Firecrow deployed her refining art at full scale. The result this time was a seed. Liu Xing looked at it and asked what kind of plant it would produce. Little Immortal leaned in and said the seed looked familiar. very similar to a fruit-bearing plant she'd eaten from before, something called the Azure Pyramid Samsara wine. The ripened fruit, she noted, was delicious. Then they both noticed Firecrow had collapsed. She was on the floor explaining, with what little energy she had left, that she was a cultivator who hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her cultivation hadn't fully recovered, and the refining process consumed a significant amount of spiritual energy. Liu Xing immediately picked her up and said she'd clearly fainted from hunger and needed to rest first. Little Immortal confirmed she'd recover within a few hours. Liu Xing noted the food problem still needed solving regardless. He thought it through. He'd already considered this before. Experiments had shown that food couldn't be transported between worlds. The working theory was that substances with biological characteristics couldn't make the crossing. This was a problem, because without a food source, resurrecting more disciples wasn't sustainable. Then Liu Xing had an idea. He suggested that with the right disciples, maybe this problem could be solved. Little Immortal said she didn't quite follow the logic, but would comply if the sect master thought it was feasible. They returned to the cauldron. The rebirth cauldron immediately began shaking with unusual violence. Little Immortal reported that this appeared to be because 2 disciples were being resurrected simultaneously. 2 forms erupted from the cauldron. Little Immortal added that they also appeared to be fighting. Liu Xing deployed the soul-binding curse immediately and told everyone to stop. The 2 figures transformed into their human forms. Firecrow, woken by the noise and deeply unimpressed, came in asking how anyone was supposed to sleep with this racket, then stopped when she saw the 2 new arrivals. Little Immortal and Liu Xing had no idea who they were. Firecrow explained, the Dragon Clan sister beauties, famous in their time, older sister Mingxia and younger sister Lily. Back in the sect, they had been the most incompatible pair imaginable, fire and water in human form. She noted, with some entertainment, that enemies really do cross paths, and suggested they have another fight to settle it. Mingxia and Lily both turned to Firecrow and told her to scram. Little Immortal reminded them both, loudly, that they had just been resurrected and perhaps ought to thank the sect master before continuing their rivalry. They both looked at Liu Xing. The first, Lily stepped forward and acknowledged that the young sect master had extraordinary spiritual energy. She could feel it. She then noted that he hadn't yet learned or cultivated any Taoist techniques and offered her assistance in that department. She was, she mentioned, the disciple most proficient in cultivation techniques and divine abilities in the entire sect. She added that she was also proficient in the art of dual cultivation. The second, Mingxia, immediately shoved her aside. She told Lily to get lost and informed Liu Xing that before joining the sect, she had been chief assassin of the Nether King sect. All manner of secret techniques came naturally to her, and therefore the sect master should obviously be taught by her. She also mentioned she knew dual cultivation. Firecrow, watching this, said it was just dual cultivation and suggested they all do it together, or alternatively just fight for the right. Both sisters punched Firecrow into the ceiling simultaneously. She made the same journey Little Immortal had made earlier. Little Immortal watched and noted, with satisfaction, that what goes around comes around. Liu Xing called the room to order. He told them that solving the food problem was the priority. He held up the seed and said that whichever of them could explain how to make it bear fruit would be the one to guide his cultivation. Mingxia got there first. She identified it as the seed of the Azure Pyramid, Samsara wine, an incredibly rare treasure. Legend held that it needed to be buried in soil of extreme evil, soil that had absorbed the evil chi from countless corpses, and that a specific cultivation method was required to make it absorb the soil's essence before it would sprout. Lily pushed forward to add the rest. After sprouting, it required a large amount of spiritual energy to grow, and it needed both evil chi and spiritual energy to coexist simultaneously. That dual requirement was exactly why the plant was so rare. She also confirmed that eating its fruit could improve cultivation and grant divine abilities. Liu Xing processed this. Spiritual energy wasn't a problem. He could keep collecting nuclear crystals. Evil chi soil, however, would require a trip into the Every Realm to gather, and the Every Realm was full of evil spirits. His range of activity had been limited before, so he hadn't run into them yet, but a dedicated collection trip was a different matter. He had Little Immortal arrange for the 3 disciples to rest separately and prepared to sleep. As he drifted off, he ran through the list. Collect more nuclear crystals in the apocalypse, gather evil chi soil in the Every Realm, get equipment distributed among the disciples. He reminded himself to make sure everyone could return safely from the soil collection. A shadowy figure slipped into the room while he slept. He woke up in his original body to 18 missed calls. He checked. It was the captain. He opened the hologram and she immediately started shouting, demanding to know why he hadn't been answering and telling him to get to her place immediately. She had something good for him. Liu Xing arrived at the Scavenger Guild building and wondered, given the volume of missed calls, whether something serious had happened. Facial recognition confirmed his identity. The door opened, things immediately started flying at him from inside. He shouted for the captain and rushed in to find Xia Yue completely fine, snacks in hand, fully absorbed in a video game. She looked up and asked what he was doing there. Liu Xing reminded her that she'd called him 18 times and said she had something good for him. Xia Yue stared blankly, then remembered. She'd landed a big job recently, she explained, but was very busy, so she was passing the opportunity to Liu Xing for training purposes. A 2-star mission from the Scavenger Guild. Generous rewards, split 70-30 when done. Lu Xing pointed out carefully that sending her only squad member on a 2-star mission alone was perhaps a bit reckless. Sihyun said it was fine. She was Sect-Rank, the strongest fighter in the guild. He couldn't possibly be that bad. Also, he was her only team member, so if he didn't go alone, the mathematical options were limited. She considered the matter settled. Liu Xing shifted his approach and mentioned he wanted to upgrade his equipment. Siwa Ian enthusiastically supported this idea. He moved closer and asked if she could perhaps sponsor some funds. Siwa Yi began coughing. Funds, she explained, were unfortunately non-existent. Her awakened new human ability was superhuman physicality. She'd never needed equipment, so she'd never budgeted for it. Liu Xing pressed. The monthly allowance for the guild's top 5 king-rank scavengers was reportedly very high. Just a small contribution. Some equipment money. A good investment. She didn't even buy equipment anyway. Siwa Yi confirmed she did not buy equipment. She bought games. And game equipment, she noted, cost significantly more than real-world equipment. New titles came out every month. And next month, Little Paradise's next-gen console was releasing. The console alone was $3,500, not counting new game cartridges, and she was already stressed about having enough. Lu Xing looked at his captain, Siwa Rank, strongest in the guild, capable of leveling a nuclear beast stampede with a single punch, and reflected that her spending wasn't like water flowing through a pipe. It was more like a flash flood, completely uncontrollable. He concluded he was on his own financially and got on his bike. He'd never refused a mission anyway, not just for the bonuses and the chance at nuclear crystals, mainly because the captain had saved his life, and he hadn't forgotten it. His history, briefly, his parents had starved to death during a famine when he was young. He'd survived by picking through trash alongside beggars. He was then captured by the Rust Plague Gang, a marauder organization that operated on robbery, to be used as a grunt, right in the middle of a territorial conflict. The winning side captured him too, and made him a child soldier, noting that the kid wasn't just hard to kill, he was fierce, good recruitment material. Marauders, however, were small fry against nuclear beasts, and regularly found themselves in the path of something much larger. Lu Xing survived a beast attack that should have killed him, his personal theory being that he simply wasn't large enough to constitute a proper mouthful. The nuclear beast didn't bother. He kept surviving through sheer constitution, taking hits that included at one point direct headshots. He remained impossibly alive. He thought this streak would last forever. Then he encountered a beast tide for the first time. A beast tide was a large-scale stampede of nuclear beasts, cause unknown, survival odds for anyone caught in it, effectively 0. Lu Xing collapsed mid-run and thought genuinely that his run of improbable survival had finally ended. Then the captain arrived. She was in the middle of an 8-star mission and had absolutely no time for this. She told Lu Xing to stay put. She needed to finish quickly. She deployed her skill, Golden Spread Punch, and threw a single punch that carved a straight path through the stampede, sending nuclear beasts rolling through the air on both sides from the shockwave alone. She then proceeded to wipe out the entire beast tide in one move, completed the 8-star mission, and casually saved Lu Xing's life as an incidental side effect of her commute home. She told him he was pretty hard to kill, and suggested he stick with her. He did. When she later discovered he had a new human constitution, she let him join her team, the Twin Leopards, making him, in the grand tradition of meteors crashing into quiet corners of the universe, the sole member of her squad. Liu Xing arrived at the Nuclear Beast Sanctuary Research Institute. 2-star mission. He reviewed the briefing as he pulled up. A welcome committee of 5 was already waiting. One stepped forward immediately. Dr. Zhu, director of the institute, greeting Liu Xing like an old friend and inviting him inside. Liu Xing gave his name and suggested they skip formalities and get straight to the briefing. They sat. Tea was offered. Liu Xing declined pleasantries and asked for the mission details. Dr. Zhu began. The Nuclear Beast Sanctuary Research Institute was a charitable organization. In 5 years of operation, they had sheltered and rescued several hundred beastmen. Humans generally viewed beastmen as dangerous, he acknowledged, but in his assessment that was prejudice. The beastmen they worked with simply wanted to integrate into human society and live somewhere safe. To that end, the institute not only sheltered them, but was actively researching how to help eliminate their bestial genes and allow full human transformation. The institute had been doing well. Then a problem arrived. A nuclear beast had been pestering the facility, which was why they'd hired a scavenger. The building shook violently mid-sentence. Dr. Zhu confirmed that was it, hitting again. Lucan told everyone to stay inside and ran out. 2 men were already outside firing guns. One reported that bullets were doing absolutely nothing. Lucan looked at what was in front of him. It was enormous. The Wasteland python, a specimen at least 10 times larger than a standard one, and from what he could assess, a highly venomous subspecies on top of that. Lu Xing ran a quick internal audit of the mission classification and concluded that this was not a 2-star situation. This was at minimum 3 stars, possibly more. The captain had genuinely outdone herself this time. The Titan Python lunged. Liu Xing assessed the situation immediately. The scales were too thick for direct fire to do anything except make a very large snake angrier. He needed to lure it away first. He turned to the guards nearby and with the energy of someone who had already decided, told one of them he was borrowing their grenades and took the entire belt. He reassured the other guard not to be nervous. He just wanted the grenades. The guard asked where his manners were. The first guard wondered privately whether this scavenger was actually serious, noting he seemed to be lacking his own weapons entirely. Li Shang, already moving, shouted at the python, tossed a grenade beside it, and hopped on his bike before the snake had finished processing what had happened. The python turned, saw Liu Shang, and gave chase. Liu Shang rode and watched it follow, lobbing grenades at intervals. He reflected, genuinely delighted, that he'd never fought a battle this well supplied before. The luxury of throwing free grenades without counting cost was something he could get used to. He made a mental note to requisition more from the Institute after the mission. Once he'd drawn the python far enough from the facility, he decided to end it. He tossed every remaining grenade simultaneously into the air and announced, with full ceremony, that the big guy should please accept his grand grenade gift package. Everything detonated at once. The python bled slightly. Li Hyun-sing looked at this result, applied a talisman to his sword, and followed up with a thunderlight slash, hitting the python directly. The wound opened, then closed, within moments completely healed. Li Hyun stared. The regeneration was, in his professional assessment, completely insane. The python roared and launched its venom. Li Hyun dodged, the acid hit the ground and the ground started melting. He looked at the dissolving concrete and concluded this wasn't even conventional venom. This was concentrated acid, significantly worse. His bike, catching the edge of the spray, was immediately and thoroughly destroyed. Liu Xing took a moment to acknowledge his fallen scooter. Then he pulled out the Azure Shadow Falcon Heaven Talisman, the one Firecrow had refined, applied it, and launched into the air. Flying now, he pointed his sword at the python and declared, in honor of his beloved little scooter, that he was going to make a serious number of nuclear crystals come out of this thing. He attacked from the air in a falcon formation, piercing the snake's body from multiple angles, creating openings across its entire length. The python endured all of it and kept recovering. Liu Xing acknowledged grudgingly that this wasteland subspecies was tougher than Diamond, beaten this badly and still snapping back. Impressive, really. But it was over. Then he noticed something. The nuclear beast's eyes were wet. It was crying. Liu Xing stopped mid-thought. He took out his whip and struck. The python's form collapsed and shifted. It transformed. Standing in front of him was a beastman. Liu Xing looked at her and said that explained the sentience. He called the mission complete and sliced cleanly. Then he went back inside the research lab, where the beastman was already talking with the others. Liu Xing clarified for the record that he had not destroyed the beastman, he had sliced off her tail. The rest of her was present and accounted for. Dr. Zhu thanked him warmly and transferred the mission reward $20,000. Liu Xing noted internally that a 1-star mission clearing a beastman den paid $5,000. A 2-star paid several times that. The math tracked. So did the part where he'd nearly been dissolved by acid and fought a self-regenerating giant snake. He was essentially trading his life for money. He then asked, casually, why a giant nuclear beast had shown up at a research institute located in an area where nuclear beasts rarely appeared. Seemed unusual. Dr. Zhu said mindless creatures wandered onto private property all the time, nothing to worry about, and immediately pivoted to offering Liu Xing rest and the company of Mei and Zia to help him decompress. Liu Xing asked, very directly, whether the research institute was running a beastman service operation. Zhu was aware that was illegal, or whether he was specifically trying to set Liu Xing up. Dr. Zhu clarified, completely consensual. Nothing to do with the institute officially. The beastmen simply wanted to express gratitude for Liu Xing protecting their home and hoped he'd continue providing security going forward. Liu Xing smiled and said he had a bold idea. He asked if all the beastmen at the institute could be gathered together. Zhu put an arm around him and said he absolutely knew how to have a good time, and that he'd arrange it immediately. The beastmen assembled in front of Liu Xing. He surveyed the room, noted he wasn't getting a particularly happy vibe from any of them, deployed a lightning curse talisman, and told them to stop pretending. Every beastman girl in the room received an electric shock simultaneously. Dr. Zhu, meanwhile, had quietly excused himself to a separate room, a room containing containers. Inside one of them was a girl, kept alive, suspended. He addressed her as his precious daughter, told her daddy had kept her waiting, blamed the troublesome nuclear beast for the delay, and announced that today, finally, he could bring her back. Liu Xing appeared directly behind him. He asked whether this was perhaps why the giant nuclear beast had been targeting the institute. Dr. Zhu turned around, composed himself, and pointed out that Liu Xing was not supposed to be in the beastman rescue room, that it had only been a few minutes, and asked how he'd possibly gotten there that fast. Liu Xing told him he'd been putting up with him for a while now, that he talked like a textbook con artist, and that he'd just tried to curse him. He demanded to know what the institute was actually doing. Then he punched the doctor in the face. Dr. Zhu, nose bleeding, dropped the act. He noted he'd originally planned to offer benefits and try to recruit Liu Xing. Since Liu Xing was insisting on meddling, cards were going on the table. He'd pressed an alarm button during their earlier conversation. The beastmen were released, and he informed Liu Xing that no matter how strong he was, he couldn't beat beastmen enhanced with biogenic technology. If blame was to be assigned, Liu Xing should blame his own youth and inexperience. Liu Xing dropped his bracelets on the ground and told the doctor he'd already lost control over them. Dr. Zhu demanded to know how, Forcibly removing the electronic collars was supposed to make their heads explode. The 6 beastmen shifted into their wild forms and surrounded Liu Xing. Liu Xing told the doctor not to worry about the how. They were his people now. He then laid out everything. The beastmen had already told him the full story. Dr. Zhu had lured female beastmen into the institute, confined them, forced electronic collars onto any who were remotely attractive, collars that administered electric shocks or detonated on command, and used them to satisfy his own demands while they had no choice but to comply. On top of that, every enhancement product and prohibited substance developed at the institute had been tested on the beastmen first. Dr. Zhu kept calling the place a charitable organization. He was, in practice, the person doing the most harm to beastmen of anyone in the area. Dr. Zhu said it wasn't like that, and then he explained. It had started with genuine conviction. Years ago, he'd witnessed a beastman girl about to be seized and had intervened, grabbed a brake and hit the man, picked the girl up and walked away. He'd gone on to become a biologist, married, had a daughter, adopted beastmen, and dedicated his research to helping them transform into humans by altering their genes. After years of work, he'd successfully deciphered the beastman genetic code. The goal was within reach. Then a test-phase transformation drug he'd developed caused a beastman to lose all sanity. The beastman went feral before anyone could respond. By the time help arrived, his wife was dead, the beastman was dead, and his daughter had only her last breath left. She managed to tell him it hurt and asked him to save her. He told her daddy was there and he would not let her die. From that point, the research was no longer about helping beastmen, it was about saving his daughter. Keeping her alive in the container required enormous ongoing expense. Finding a cure was an unknown timeline. To fund both, he'd made a deal with an underground organization. They provided funding and live beastmen subjects. He extracted materials from the beastmen to produce enhancers, hallucinogens, and prohibited drugs, which the organization sold on the black market and split the profits with him. Gradually, beastmen became tools. Eventually, he had become exactly what he had once despised. But none of that mattered anymore, he said, because he had found the solution. Gene fusion. Find a genetically compatible beastman, fuse their body with his daughter's, create a new one for her. Simple in theory. Finding a compatible match had been like finding a needle in a haystack, until by chance the beastman he had originally saved all those years ago ended up back at the institute. The gene compatibility between her and his daughter had tested at 99.9%, a perfect match. The only thing standing between him and saving his daughter had been the Titan Python, which had been disrupting operations and making the lengthy, error-intolerant gene fusion process impossible to start. Now that Liu Xing had eliminated the Python, Dr. Zhu announced there was nothing left to stop him. System, initiate gene fusion. And a sound then came, initiation confirmed. Dr. Zhu stood in his laboratory and informed Liu Xing with the calm of someone who had already pressed the button that gene fusion once initiated could not be stopped. Killing him now would accomplish nothing. Liu Xing immediately shouted to the beastmen to rescue whoever was still in the incubation pods. If they waited any longer, the power drain would finish them off. The beastmen girls rushed toward the specimens, moving fast. Liu Xing ran his own assessment. Destroying the power supply now would only accelerate the shortage hitting the incubation pods. It wouldn't touch the main fusion process, which was already consolidating all available power to itself. There was nothing to do but hope. Then a shock hit him. He looked up. The fusion had begun. The beastman girl and Dr. Zhu's daughter were physically connecting to each other. Liu Xing watched and said it had started. Dr. Zhu confirmed it, noting the process looked very smooth. Liu Xing said something seemed off. The beast girl was rejecting it. As the process approached completion, Dr. Zhu noticed it too. He shouted Jin rejection. He collapsed into his chair, demanding to know if the 0.1 biggest percent genetic difference had caused it. He announced it was over. If the fusion couldn't be forcibly stopped, his daughter Ziking would turn into a monster. Then the laboratory wall exploded inward. A giant hand punched through it. The Titan Python, alive, injured, tail missing, had arrived. Dr. Zhu screamed, asking how she was still alive, and demanding to know what she was doing. Liu Xing looked at the trajectory she was moving in and said she was going for the main power cable. The scene rewound briefly. After Liu Xing had reported back to the institute, the beastmen had asked him directly, why had he only cut off her tail? Wasn't he afraid she'd kill him once she recovered? Liu Xing explained that during the attack on the institute, she could have killed the guards easily. Instead, she'd used her serpent body to knock them away. She hadn't wanted to kill anyone. He'd wanted to understand her actual intentions before making any decisions, and she'd told him everything. After the nuclear war, the forests on the outskirts of the apocalypse city had taken severe contamination. The animals that survived mutated. Among the snakes, a green snake and a white snake were the first to evolve into beastman form. The forest wasn't far from human settlements, and the little green snake, curious, carrying no ill will toward anyone, had wandered over regularly to observe. Play with fire, get burned. She was nearly hunted down. A young Dr. Zhu saved her. Years later, the grown green snake encountered the doctor again and decided to repay the kindness. The white snake, uneasy about the whole plan but unwilling to let her companion go alone, snuck into the research institute alongside her. They'd intended to surprise the doctor. They walked into traps instead. The green snake was strapped down. The white snake, trying desperately to free her, fought back, and in the struggle knocked over the chemicals. enhancer, hallucinogen, and solvent toxin, all at once, all over her. Dr. Zhu's primary reaction was to calculate the monetary loss and worry about how to explain it to his boss. The combined chemical cocktail caused the white snake to mutate and lose her mind. She attacked indiscriminately until she blacked out. When she came to, she was deep in the Bloodhorn Maze forest and had grown to an enormous size. After that, she'd approached the research institute repeatedly, but only used her body defensively, never killed anyone, never forced her way inside. She knew that breaking in would endanger the other beastmen companions inside. She'd stayed outside, hoping that the benefactor the green snake had spoken of so warmly would help her escape. She had no idea the person who had put the green snake in danger in the first place was that same benefactor. Liu Xing let that land, then said, the one currently risking her life to save Dr. Zhu's daughter was the white snake. The very same. The Titan Python went into full rampage and tore the power cables out of the wall. Liu Xing looked at her and said her name. Sometime later, Liu Xing brought the little green snake back to the captain's place. The captain noticed the small figure first, patted her on the head, and asked where this kid had come from and whether she was lost. Liu Xing stepped forward and reported in. The mission was a success, and there had been an unexpected bonus on top of it. He explained what had happened in the hours following the power cutoff. The gene fusion experiment had been terminated, thanks largely to the White Titan Python. And despite the experiment failing, Dr. Zhu's daughter Ziqing had surprisingly regained consciousness. Awake and present, Ziqing told her father the truth about that day. His wife and the beastman had not been killed by the beastman's rampage. They had been killed by a black shadowy figure, completely covered in tentacles, that had appeared before the scavengers arrived. The beastman had fought it to their last breath, trying to protect Ziqing and the others. Dr. Zhu had been blaming the wrong party entirely for years. Ziqing persuaded her father to let go of his obsession. Dr. Zhu sat with this. He had not only wrongly blamed the beastmen, he had spent years actively harming them because of it. The mistake couldn't be undone. What he could do now was everything in his power for the little green snake in front of him. Zhu's genes and the white python splitting the result between the two half-girls to repair the 0.01% rejection and form a completely new life. The problem? No power. The gene restoration couldn't proceed without it. Both of them chose to proceed anyway, accepting the cost. Liu Xing used his last lightning talisman to provide the power. It was his final life-saving talisman. He used it without hesitation. The captain listened to all of this, looked at the small half-beastman in Liu Xing's arms, and confirmed that this was the unexpected bonus he'd mentioned. Liu Xing said yes. Given her identity, leaving her alone would most likely have resulted in her death. Besides, with her potential, if the captain trained her, she might become the third member of the twin leopards. The captain leaned toward the little beast girl, considered her, and said it wasn't out of the question for her to stay. She noted that the girl was a fusion of Titan Python and human, and announced her new name on the spot, Xia Bao. Liu Xing thought privately that the name probably should have been based on either the Titan Python side or the human side, and also that she already had a name. He said nothing, because the captain had already turned around laughing and moved on. She turned back to Xia Bao and laid out the terms clearly. Their team did not carry freeloaders. Starting today, Xia Bao was on cooking and chore duty. With Xia Bao settled, Liu Xing gathered the nuclear crystals he'd collected from the mission, including a massive core crystal left behind by the White Titan Python, along with the weapons confiscated from the Research Institute, and went to sleep. He opened his eyes in the cultivation world. Firecrow was sleeping on top of him. He removed her immediately and demanded an explanation. She informed him that dual cultivation with the Sect Master would accelerate her cultivation recovery, which meant she'd be able to refine better treasures sooner. Very logical, very efficient. Liu Xing processed the phrase dual cultivation and asked, carefully, whether she meant what he thought she meant. He moved past it. He told her that since he'd given her this opportunity, she'd better produce results, and presented her with the giant white python core crystal. He placed his hand on it and noted that with a spirit crystal this size and her current cultivation level, she should be able to refine something genuinely impressive. Firecrow released her fire immediately and told the Sect Master to rest assured. Top-grade treasure. Guaranteed this time. Mid-refinement, a black flame appeared that nobody had summoned. Liu Xing asked what it was. Firecrow, visibly surprised, said the treasure had directly acknowledged its master. The black flames covered Liu Xing's body. He shifted into shadow. A full body armor wove itself onto him, assembled from darkness, seamless and immediate. Its name Yimmo Xingjin. Firecrow announced, with genuine admiration, that the Yimmo Xingjin had been woven and refined from the sinew spirits of 9,000-year-old cat demons. The wearer became as light as a swallow, gained camouflage and stealth capabilities, and according to legend, the brocade also contained a hidden cat-related technique waiting to be discovered. Liu Xing stood in his new shadow armor and took stock of the situation. Things were looking up. After the refining session, Firecrow was completely spent. She told Liu Xing to please spare her. Liu Xing was already sitting there reviewing his new collection of treasures, noting with satisfaction that this batch had yielded quite a lot of good material. Firecrow flattened on the floor, announced that 5 refinements in one go was genuinely her limit. Liu Xing told her to rest, and said he'd be taking Mingxia and Luli out for the soil collection trip. Fire Crow, flat on the ground, told him to be very careful on the journey, then smiled in a way that suggested she found the situation privately entertaining. Liu Xing, Mingxia, and Luli climbed out of the well. Mingxia emerged first, inhaled deeply, and declared that time flies. She could finally breathe outside air again, and for this single breath another 100 years of waiting would have been worth it. Luli came out shouting that Mingxia's taste was as extreme as ever, and asked what exactly was so enjoyable about inhaling the intense stench of decomposing corpses. Mingxia told her to watch her mouth. Liu Xing told both of them to stop arguing and move. The area was dangerous. They needed to collect the soil and leave. Luli crouched and examined the ground immediately. She announced the soil here wouldn't work. The corpses had been drained completely dry long ago. Soil of utmost evil required full absorption of resentment and evil chi. This wasn't it. Then she went still. An aura was approaching. Mingxia grabbed both Liu Xing and Luli, pulled them under cover, and whispered for them to hide immediately. A giant humanoid figure appeared, a female cultivator, airborne, scanning the area. She noted she had clearly smelled the aura of living people but couldn't locate the source. She flew off, muttering that she couldn't afford to keep searching. If she didn't bring in new disciples before dark, she'd be the next one used as a cultivation vessel herself. Ancestor Wutong's patience was not infinite. She left. Liu Xing emerged, the demon cat cloud brocade's invisibility still active around him. He identified the cultivator as someone who rounded up new disciples for the Sensen Gate's Sect master. Fortunately, the brocade's invisibility had kept them out of direct confrontation, and her appearance had given him an idea about where to find the soil of utmost evil. He looked upward. The Ascension Gate. A figure stood at its entrance delivering a speech about embracing the Tao, escaping samsara, tempering the soul and body, and ascending to ultimate bliss. Luli and Mingxia, now in human form and dressed casually enough to blend in, joined the stream of people being brought toward the gate. Luli whispered to Mingxia that mixing into a group of captured disciples felt exactly like walking into a trap. Mingxia told her the most dangerous place was actually the safest. She looked to Liu Xing for confirmation. Liu Xing answered from inside Mingxia's clothing, in cat form. He confirmed the logic, told them he had a plan, and said they just needed to cooperate with him when the signal came. Inside, the female cultivator unlocked a door and told all disciples to rest and await the sect master's summons. Luli whispered to Liu Xing, asking if she should accompany him. Mingxia whispered the same concern. Liu Xing told them both not to worry. He was familiar with this place from the original owner's memories, and bringing them would only slow things down. He told them to move immediately when they received his signal. He padded forward through the corridors in cat form. The space had a curse on it. The longer one stayed, the stronger the spatial distortion became. He moved quickly, following the original owner's memories toward the end of a specific corridor. He arrived and stopped. An overwhelming, ominous pressure hit him from nowhere. He was flung upside down and stuck. The female cultivator swept past the area again, noting she sensed the aura of a living person but couldn't find a trace. Liu Xing held position using the brocade's invisibility. The problem: the invisibility effect consumed large amounts of spiritual energy and couldn't be used continuously. The demon cat transformation burned less energy, but Liu Xing's overall cultivation was still shallow. He needed to move fast. Elsewhere in the compound, newly recruited disciples were being guided through the halls. One cultivator narrated, 9 revolutions mystic art. Tao unites heaven and earth, ascends in rosy clouds. The disciples filed forward obediently. Another cultivator told them to go in quickly. Once they ascended, there would be no more suffering. Liu Xing arrived at the entrance ahead of them and slipped through a closing gap. This was the Ascension Gate's Hall of Immortality. The ascension to immortality being advertised to the disciples was, as Liu Xing noted, entirely a deception. In reality, this was the site within the entire Ascension Gate where resentment and evil chi were most concentrated. The perfect source of soil of utmost evil. He landed inside. In front of him was the blood sacrifice soul-refining furnace. Liu Xing crouched in the blood sacrifice soul-refining furnace, scooping soil and observing that the evil fire inside operated on principles that defied basic physics. The temperature was freezing, yet produced an intense burning sensation simultaneously. He collected what he could and decided he had enough. Any longer and he'd be completely drained. Then he started floating. He asked himself, with some alarm, why he was floating. The life-soul cauldron was only supposed to affect human souls. Could it be? He began meowing involuntarily. His spiritual energy had run out. The demon cat form collapsed. Liu Xing returned to human form mid-air and dropped straight down. He hit the pillar and stuck to it. Chains wrapped around him as countless souls drifted past. Liu Xing assessed the situation. If this continued, the blood sacrifice soul-refining furnace would refine him along with everything else. He needed a way out immediately. Then a hand grabbed him. Chains appeared, pulling him back slightly. A soul visible, present, deliberate, had reached for him. Liu Xing identified her as a soul. She immediately covered his mouth and asked, in a sharp whisper, whether he could actually see her. Liu Xing noted internally that being able to perceive souls was likely one of the attributes of the demon cat cloud brocade. Out loud he asked quietly how she wasn't being refined like all the others and who she was. She told him to keep his voice down. Ancestor Wutong was in secluded cultivation, but his divine soul could monitor everything within the Ascension Gate at any moment. She then explained, she was different from the other souls. She was the artifact spirit of the soul-refining furnace itself. She observed that for him to have transformed into a demon cat and made it this far, his abilities were clearly extraordinary. She could also sense his aura wasn't that of someone from the evil path. She proposed a deal. Her name was Zhao Jing. Originally, she had been the sect guarding treasure of the Zuandan sect, the world's foremost pill-refining sect. Her function, the evil refining pill-transforming furnace, capable of refining demons, monsters, ghosts, and fiends into various immortal pills. Beyond standard cultivation-enhancing pills, she could refine rare immortal pills that granted divine abilities. Then the heavenly tribulation came, evil chi invaded, the sect fell. She ended up in the hands of those on the evil path, and ancestor Wutong used a soul-locking divine needle to seal her completely, converting her into the blood-sacrifice soul-refining furnace, controlling her to use human flesh and blood essence to refine evil pills. She had lost her freedom and been forced into deeply depraved work ever since. Now, with Wutong in secluded cultivation, she could move about secretly in her artifact spirit state. She wanted Lu Xing's help removing the soul-locking divine needle so she could regain her freedom. In return, she would become his artifact spirit. Any request he made, as long as it didn't violate the righteous path, she would fulfill. Even if he wanted her to offer, Lu Xing told her to stop immediately. He said he needed to confirm something first. The soul-locking divine needle she was describing, that wouldn't happen to be the enormous pillar directly behind him, would it? It was exactly that pillar. Lu Xing pointed out that helping her wasn't really a choice at this point anyway. Staying bound to the pillar led to one outcome for him too. He said he'd like to help remove the needle if she didn't mind. He clarified, preemptively, that he was not after her body, and that right now, before anything else, he needed to figure out how to break free from the current restraints. Jihyun pulled him clear of the pillar herself. Lu Xing expressed relief. She immediately told him she could not let go. Releasing him meant being sucked straight back in. Lu Xing told her to leave the rest to him. He drew his Tianyuan great treasure sword and sent it directly at the soul-locking needle. It deflected off the pillar and came back at both of them. He tried his thunder whip next. Same result. Zhao Jing asked if he was alright and suggested he rest. Liu Xing, already exhausted, looked at his options and landed on the pill Firecrow had recently refined. He'd been saving it. He thought briefly about using an item to get a girl, then immediately corrected himself, using one item to obtain a cultivation vessel capable of producing far more items. Completely worth it. Totally different framing. He activated it and shouted, "Ignite my life." Fire poured from his body. The Tiger Soul Force gathering pill increased brute strength 100-fold for the duration of one incense stick. Liu Xing pressed both hands against the pillar. It began to crack. Xiao Jing asked why his hands were so hot. Liu Xing told her the pill was kicking in, and to bear it for a moment. He shattered the pillar. The soul-locking divine needle broke apart. Xiao Jing was freed instantly. She flew forward and embraced Liu Xing, declaring that from this moment on, she was his cultivation vessel. She then transformed in his raised hand into a cauldron. Lu Xing reflected that the phrasing had sounded slightly strange throughout, but concluded the outcome was undeniably worth it. He'd come for soil. He'd walked out with the evil refining pill, transforming furnace, which almost certainly contained more soil of utmost evil inside it than he'd ever need. The most pressing issue now was getting out alive. Then the female cultivator appeared in the doorway. She called him a little thief, informed him that stealing from the Ascension Gate had consequences, and made her position clear. He could take the item, but he would be leaving his life behind. The female cultivator looked at Lu Xing with her head at an unsettling angle and thought he seemed familiar. Lu Xing, for his part, thought the opposite. He'd made too much noise and woken up someone he very much didn't want to wake. From the original owner's memories, the marrow fragrance cultivator. Her clan cultivated by devouring essence, blood, and energy from mortal bone marrow. Their sect art, the heaven-holding avatar, transformed them into massive demonic monsters. Low-level cultivators were essentially insects in front of them. Lu Xing had exactly one shot. She opened her mouth wide and announced she remembered him. She'd been the one who'd tossed him aside before. She was confused about how he was still alive, and even more confused about how he'd pulled out the soul-locking needle. His cultivation was still low, but something about his aura had shifted. She suspected a rare artifact. She told him to hand it over, and depending on whether she liked it, might consider letting him live. She leaned in close, mouth wide open. Lu Xing had been waiting for exactly that. He gathered every remaining scrap of energy in his fist and drove it straight into her open mouth. The punch blasted through and tore her head apart. He sat down immediately after, completely spent. Then he noticed something. The cultivator's body began vaporizing, and something remained, a dense glowing object. Jia Jing informed him that was the cultivator's foundation, her golden marrow fragrant bone. Every bit of her power was stored inside it. Liu Jing looked at it in his hand and said he'd just hit the jackpot. He asked how to use it. Jia Jing said she'd be taking that, reached out from the cauldron and pulled it in. Liu Jing said fine, take it. The strength-gathering pill had worn off. Liu Jing had the soil and an unexpected bonus prize. He assessed the situation, concluded it was time to quit while ahead, and shifted back into cat form. His spiritual energy had recovered slightly. Cat demon form was manageable. Time to regroup with Luli and Mingsha. Behind him, something stirred. The cultivator he just killed hadn't entirely died. A fragment of her consciousness had transferred into an insect form. She thought, furious and disbelieving, that a thief with that low a cultivation level had no business being that strong. He'd taken the most precious thing she had. She needed a new body fast, or it was over for her. Back in the cell, Mingxia was asleep with zero situational awareness. Luli sat awake, thinking that sleeping like that in a place where death lurked around every corner showed a remarkable lack of instinct. She was also wondering why the sect leader hadn't returned yet. A fly entered the cell. Luli tracked it. She clapped her hands mid-air. Missed. She noted the bugs were getting annoying and watched as it headed straight toward the sleeping Mingxia and landed on her face. The bug, now sitting on Mingxia, thought, "This vessel is not bad at all." Luli did not hesitate. She slapped Mingxia across the face with full force. Mingxia jolted awake with a swollen cheek, asked what was happening, and noted it had felt like an earthquake. Luli had the bug trapped inside an energy bubble in her palm. She whispered for Mingxia to calm down and not blow their cover. Then Lu Xing's voice came through. "Soil secured, head for the exit, rendezvous with him now." Luli looked at the struggling bug in her hand. They both looked toward the sound of Lu Xing's voice and started moving. A large figure blocked the corridor. A centipede-shaped cultivator self-identified as Centipede Taoist appeared, looked at the two women and announced he'd heard a commotion. He noted these must be the new junior sisters, mentioned the sect leader was in seclusion, and offered, with entirely too much enthusiasm, to spar with them in his room, which he assured them was significantly more comfortable than the cell. Mingxia told him she'd heard Centipede's senior brother was incredibly skilled and wondered if someone so talented might know a way to get them out of the Ascension Gate. After all, if the sect leader found out about any dual cultivation happening inside the gate, that wouldn't end well for anyone. She thought, let him take the bait, get outside, find a good moment to kill him. The centipede monster took the bait completely. He called her naughty and said he liked that. Luli immediately kicked him in the face. Mingxia asked why she'd blown their cover when he'd already fallen for it. They could have tricked him out of the gate. Luli said she was done listening. All talk, no action. They were smashing him. Mingxia conceded the point and pulled out the guns and grenades Lu Xing had given them. Their cultivation was barely a tenth of what it had been in their past lives, so if they were going all in, they might as well use the sect leader's gifts first. She handed Luli a grenade. Luli looked at it with wide eyes and said it felt amazing just to hold. What kind of mega immortal pill was this? Mingxia said, since she was so enthusiastic she could have all of them, she'd stick with her bow and arrows. Luli took both guns and all the grenades. The centipede monster stood up, head splitting into numerous additional heads, and demanded to know who these people were. He announced he'd almost been played. Luli and Mingxia charged immediately. The monster attacked. Mingxia broke off toward the exit, per Luli's instruction. Luli said there was no point in hiding anymore and told her to go meet the sect leader while she handled this side. Mingxia passed her and said quietly not to dare die before she'd paid her back for the slap. Luli put the grenade in her mouth. She thought, alone, she probably couldn't hold out. But with a divine pill from the sect leader, this fight had just turned around. Then she felt something strange. An explosion detonated directly out of her body. She stood completely still as the shockwave cleared. The centipede monster attacked and swallowed her whole. Sprinting away, Luli glanced back and clocked that Mingxia's aura had completely vanished. She let out a mental sigh of relief and faced forward again, only to immediately start wondering how that brain-dead waste of space Mingxia could possibly be the king's #1 assassin. Meanwhile, in the most inconvenient timing possible, Mingxia's consciousness dropped straight into her own soul realm and found a mosquito beast already down there making itself comfortable. The beast looked at the situation, looked at Mingxia's soul, and thought, tables turned. It had nearly been slapped into paste just a moment ago, and now here was the cultivator's consciousness, completely out cold. The beast opened its demonic mouth and decided this was, without question, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to evict the soul and move in permanently. No holding back. It was just about to engulf Mingxia's soul when a hand grabbed it cold. Mingxia, the other one, had arrived. She looked at the mosquito beast with the energy of someone who had just found a cockroach in their kitchen and said flatly, "What is a bug doing in a consciousness?" The mosquito beast barely had time to register that this second consciousness existed before realizing, with mounting horror, that it was terrifyingly powerful. One fist, 1 second, the mosquito beast's soul was dust, and Mingxia stood there savoring the feeling of tearing something to shreds, thinking she could not wait to take over this body. Her soul then merged into Mingxia's original soul without further ceremony. Back in the physical world, inside the centipede monster's body, Mingxia was grabbed by what felt like 100 hands at once. Her eyes snapped open. Demonic energy erupted from every direction. The centipede monster, thoroughly unbothered, let out a burp and remarked that this young lady was quite the delicacy. Ashamed to lose her, but she only had herself to blame. He then turned his attention to the junior sister who had fled earlier, only to feel something. A punch from inside his stomach, then another, then his legs, his face, everywhere. His entire body was being stretched from within like badly packed luggage. And then, one brutal moment later, Mingsha, second personality fully online, tore the entire centipede monster apart from the inside out. She stepped free, rolled her neck, and announced that she had been trapped for several hundred years, and it was time to stretch her legs. She then looked at what remained of the centipede monster and noted, almost offhandedly, that he had been remarkably frail. The centipede monster, now reduced to just a severed hand, did the only logical thing. It ran. Mingsha spotted it immediately, identified it as his Dao foundation, and crushed it on the spot. Then she began roaming around to get her bearings. The hand, however, was still alive. The monster's consciousness clung to it, scuttling along, until it ran directly into Liu Xing. Liu Xing stared at the hand, deeply puzzled. From within, the cauldron spirit informed him that this was Taoist Zhu Dao's foundation, specifically his left hand, and had no answer for why it was here either. Elsewhere, Luli was running and searching for the exit, which she was fairly certain was right around here somewhere, except the path ahead just kept going. And going. Something was wrong. Then a figure appeared in front of her, a man, seated in a cultivation posture, blocking the only path forward. He said, "You've crossed my threshold. Did you really think you could just leave?" Luli had exactly zero patience for this. She summoned her bow, nocked an arrow, and told him plainly that she did not care if he was a god or a ghost. She fired. The arrow went straight through his head. His head healed instantly. The cultivator looked at her and said, "Foolish. You're seeking your own death." A vine-like appendage stretched out from his body. A second head emerged from it, informing her that since she had brought this fate upon herself, she would reap exactly what she had sown. He drove his hand into Luli's body. Loli went still. Then she smiled, faint, unbothered. The cultivator froze, visibly rattled. The cultivator's hand was still buried in Loli's body. He studied her for a moment, then remarked that her cultivation was no joke. She had let herself get caught on purpose. He wanted to know what she was doing infiltrating the Ascension Gate. Loli told him there was no point in a dead man asking questions. The cultivator decided that if words weren't happening, he would try a different approach. His body began to shift, skin splitting, form dissolving into a writhing mass of tentacles and dense, grotesque flesh. He announced that since she wouldn't talk, there was no further use in keeping her alive. He retracted his hand and told her she might as well become one with him. The tentacles surged forward and wrapped around her, lower half completely swallowed. The cultivator finished his transformation into a giant, ancient, bald old man. He held Lully like a rag doll and informed her, with genuine enthusiasm, that becoming part of his body was honestly the best outcome she could hope for. He opened his mouth. His tongue slid out. On it were countless monstrous creatures, all waiting. Loli just lay there, helpless, and then her body cracked, shattered, and was gone. The old man stared. What? It had been an illusion, a high-level illusion, and he hadn't noticed it for even a second. Before he could process the embarrassment, Loli appeared in front of him, real this time, in full unbothered energy. The old man demanded to know how she had used the flowing light illusion technique. Loli, composed as ever, explained that she had used it to draw him out. Finding him herself would have taken longer. She then added, without blinking, that the flowing light illusion technique was originally a secret art of the true Dragon Clan, and that his knockoff half-baked version barely qualified as the real thing. The old man bristled. He introduced himself. Taoist Taizu, master of illusion techniques. He acknowledged her skill, said they were clearly matched, and smoothly suggested, while a monstrous tentacle quietly crept up from the ground behind her, that he recommend her to the Sect master and have her join the Ascension Gate so they could study together. Loli, without turning around, said she would repeat herself. She did not play games with dead men. The old man, deciding pleasantries were over, triggered the ambush. His younger three-headed, six-armed form burst out of the tentacle behind her. Luli had already noticed. The form was cut down. She activated her manifest technique, shifting into her soul-devouring heavenly demon form, and loaded her bow. The old man looked at her transformation, and his confidence evaporated on the spot. He stammered. She was from the true Dragon Clan? Impossible. The twin dragons had been wiped out long ago. He was still in the middle of his despair when she shot him through the head. The old man, dying, noted with some irritation that she had already tried this, and that it was useless against him. He began to reassure himself that he wasn't dead. His upper skull exploded. Luli floated in the air, utterly unbothered. The old man, with whatever was left of him, gasped. How? She explained. The blood of the twin dragons could only break an illusion technique with a twin dragon secret technique. From the moment she had first been grabbed in the corridor, she had already infused her illusion with her blood. Dragon's blood. The instant he first made contact, his illusion techniques became worthless. He had been cooked from the very beginning and simply hadn't known it. As the old man's body dissolved, something slithered out, a small snail-like creature. Lully stared at it, raised her hand and identified it. His Deo Foundation. A severed skink tail. She thought, dryly, that it explained why he had been so insufferably pretentious. She moved to finish it. The floor erupted. Countless vine-like tendrils shot up, covered in enchantments, spreading in every direction, and with them came a sound. Low, relentless, chant-like, drilling directly into the mind. Lully faltered. She couldn't identify it, but it was like someone whispering a spell directly into her ear. On the other side of the dungeon, Mingsha felt it too. She clutched her head, veins rising, and shouted about the sound before the pain hit her. Lu Xing was already moving. He grabbed Mingsha before she went down, and noted that he had already secured the centipede's Dao Foundation, the hand, strapped and dealt with. He took in the situation and thought, whatever that sound was, it had dropped Mingsha instantly. He had been hoping to ask her where Luli had gone. That plan was now on hold. His bracelet spirit emerged and told him plainly, this was the sign that Ancestor Wutong was coming out of seclusion. After absorbing a massive quantity of monster blood essence, the Ancestor had entered deep cultivation and had apparently emerged stronger than before. His mere presence was enough to overwhelm the mind. Liu Xing's expression dropped. If that ancestor came out now, none of them would be a match for him, and Luli still wasn't here. He couldn't leave without her. The cauldron spirit said she had a plan. She would need his cooperation. Liu Xing asked her to go on. She told him specifically that she needed him to perform dual cultivation with her. Liu Xing asked the cauldron spirit, out loud, visibly bewildered, if she meant dual cultivation. Here, in this place. She told him no, inside his body, and entered his consciousness through his head before he could follow up. Liu Xing looked around. The space was vast and unfamiliar. The spirit appeared in front of him and explained, this was his spiritual sense space. Since she was still in artifact spirit form, this was the only location where dual cultivation was possible. She summoned 3 of her artifacts, looked around at the space and told him plainly that it was brimming with spiritual energy. He was a cultivation prodigy. It was a shame he hadn't started yet. She then produced the Golden Lotus Foundation that Taoist Soas had left behind, explaining that cultivating with it as a base would allow him to convert and absorb the remaining cultivation within, and would multiply the effects of his initial breakthrough several times over, enough to temper his blood and define his foundation as a sect master. Liu Xing sat atop the lotus. Energy began moving through his body, circulating, building, pressing against every limit he had, and he screamed. The spirit kept talking through it. He would break through to the chi condensing stage immediately, and then it was done. Liu Xing opened his eyes. 6 patterns marked his body. He sat with it for a moment and thought, so this is what cultivation feels like. A scorching heat running through everything, and somehow impossibly comfortable at the same time. The artifact spirit floated closer and told him that was because he had already broken through to sect master level. Her robes dissolved. Liu Xing was already unclothed. She informed him that the Golden Lotus Foundation had been fully expended, and that it was now time for her to assist him with his foundation establishment, and began the dual cultivation, settling over him. As they cultivated, she explained, even though she was only an artifact spirit at the chi defending stage, she had not used all the vitality she had extracted from the living source while refining pills for the ancestor. She had quietly kept a portion aside. The energy began flowing through her as well. She told him she was transferring all of it to him and to brace himself. The first time would be a little uncomfortable. He had to hold on. As the peak hit, they both cried out, holding onto each other, and Liu Xing's physical body outside began to rise into the air. The centipede's Dao Foundation, that hand still tied up, felt the shift in energy and started struggling against its bindings. It got loose. It ran. It ran directly into Loli, who had been wandering around lost and happened to be right there. She spotted the hand bolting back toward Liu Xing and immediately assessed the situation. The sect master's chi just now, had the invasion knocked him unconscious? She shouted at the hand, demanding to know where it thought it was going, and sprinted after it. The hand, displaying excellent survival instincts, grabbed Mingsha's face instead. Luli's kick connected with it a half-second later. She started wrestling the thing. Mingsha woke up from unconsciousness mid-struggle, looked around at floating Liu Xing, the hand tangled in her face, and Luli kicking things, and asked, with complete sincerity, who she was and where she was. Then the sound returned. Ancestor Wutong's presence hit the air again, that low, skull-drilling chant, and both Mingsha and Loli grabbed their heads simultaneously. Mingsha shouted about the sound. Loli demanded to know what it was. A figure materialized in front of them. Massive. Its hand reached toward them both. Loli said, astral projection. But how is it this large? Mingsha explained, thousands of souls, all being controlled by a single powerful spiritual soul. The projection was the sum of all of them. The projection finished forming and spoke, which dares to cause trouble, while I am in seclusion. Luli began gathering her spiritual energy immediately. Reading the situation, the sect master was still out. She had already burned through most of her reserves in the last fight, and her only option was a head-on clash. Then Mingsha said she didn't know if adding her own spiritual energy would be enough, and looked at Luli. Luli glanced at her, smiled, just slightly. They merged their power, charged it into Luli's bow. The arrow that formed was built from both of them, and they fired it directly into the astral projection. It tore straight through. The projection reformed instantly, not even a scratch worth noting. The hand kept coming. The projection announced that since they had placed themselves on the path of no return, they had only themselves to blame. The heavenly dipper shatters, the source of mountains and rivers in a single palm. It was going to send them to their graves. The hand closed in. Neither of them moved. There was nowhere to go. Loli said quietly that she hadn't expected to die with Mingsha in this life. Mingsha replied that she would be sure to settle the score in the next one. And then, from behind them both, Lu Xing's consciousness exploded out, riding a sword, his soul, blazing with everything the dual cultivation had just given him, shot forward and struck the astral projection's attack head-on. That single attack from Lu Xing's consciousness took the astral projection's entire arm clean off. The projection's other hand swung back immediately, and it said, trying to move a tree without knowing how deep the roots go. The punch came down toward Lu Xing. The projection told him he might be able to break its body, but the disaster had already been set in motion. The consequences would be settled in the upper realm. The punch landed. The floor shattered completely. And then, with no body left to anchor it, the astral projection began to scatter. It flew apart, and in its last moment it seized the centipede monster's hand, pouring its remaining strength through it. The hand absorbed it instantly, and declared that the strength of the ancestor was already wrapped around its fingers. It used that power to rip the centipede monster's heart free and take it. Mingsha, reading the energy output, shouted that from what she was sensing off the sect leader's spirit, he was close to reaching the core formation level. Luli stared and said, so he wasn't unconscious just now. He was cultivating, but this breakthrough speed was absolutely unhinged. Lu Xing, being physically carried by both of them as they fled, said it was a long story. They made it out, all three of them, free of the space. Loli greeted him. Sect leader finished cultivating? Lu Xing told them all to head back to the sect first. They dove into the well that led back down to the sect's location. Lu Xing immediately told them to seal the well with the dead bodies. Their hiding place had been compromised, and Ancestor Wutong would absolutely be hunting them now. Loli said, flatly, that a dead bodies probably wasn't going to cut it. Mingsha agreed. They needed a spell. Loli floated up, gathered her power, and got to work. Rocks were stacked and layered over the entrance, and on top of everything she placed enormous corpses to bury the site entirely. Concealed, they dropped to the bottom of the cave, and found a monster in their path. Mid-lunge toward Lu Xing, a crow shot in front of it and blocked the attack. Lu Xing told everyone to stop. The monster was the immortal spirit in beast form. The crow was Fire Crow. They both registered him and said, Sect leader, you're back. Lu Xing asked what was going on. The immortal spirit reported, Firecrow had stolen spirit stones and secretly opened the sect's hidden room, hence the chase. Firecrow fired back immediately. She had only borrowed the sect leader's spirit stones to unlock a perfectly good cultivation space for everyone's benefit. The word stolen was completely uncalled for. Lu Xing considered this a secret cultivation room, so Firecrow had been scrounging crystals specifically to activate it behind everyone's backs. He asked what made the room special. The immortal spirit explained, this was where the former sect leader had built the One Breath 3 Autumns Pavilion. 1 day inside equaled 3 days outside. She then pointed at Firecrow and demanded to know how she had known about it, how she had opened it, and what else she was hiding because aside from herself and the former sect leader, no one had known this room existed. Firecrow said she had just stumbled onto it by accident. Lu Xing filed that away. Clearly this One Breath 3 Autumns Pavilion was a bigger deal than it looked, but pressing Firecrow for answers right now was not the priority. He told them to let the Spirit Stone theft go for the time being. There were bigger problems incoming and preparations to make. He handed the remaining 4 crystals to the immortal spirit. Her tasks: keep recruiting new disciples to build the sect's strength, make sure Firecrow was using the court crystals daily to produce new treasures, and, most critically, she, Loli, and Ming Sha needed to get the Blue Sky Reincarnation Wind Seeds growing as fast as possible. All 3 of them. The 3 of them got to work without argument. Their survival depended on it. After briefing everyone on how he had obtained the Cauldron Spirit's opportunity and assigning every task, Lu Xing headed to the One Breath 3 Autumns Pavilion alone. He pushed the door open with his power and stepped inside. The space looked like a galaxy. Cosmic energy so thick it pressed against the skin and made every cell in the body feel lit up. Yuxing stood in it and thought, this place was something else entirely. He then let the cauldron spirit emerge from his body, settled in and closed his eyes. With her continuing the dual cultivation here to help him form his core, reaching the golden core level was only a matter of time. Back at the Immortal Ascension Sect, the sect leader sat across from his disciple, the centipede monster, Tao Foundation in pieces, body essentially gone. The sect leader looked at him and said, I see, this isn't entirely your fault, my dear disciple, but you are not completely innocent either. The trouble you started is yours to resolve. He extended a finger. It elongated, transformed, and a creature emerged from it, grabbed the severed hand, and swallowed it whole. The sect leader announced, this crimson calamity centipede larva would rebuild the body. The body began to grow back. As it reformed, the sect leader added the condition. This body would only last 1 day and 1 night. If the disciple caught those 3 fugitives and brought them back within that time, the spell would be extended to keep the body going. The body finished reconstructing. Leaner now, the bulk gone, replaced with something pale and sharp, the centipede monster looked at his sect leader and said, understood. In the real world, a boy was cutting through the sky on a second-hand skullflight pack strapped to his back, 1,200 kilometers an hour, $20,000, and in his own assessment, absolutely worth every cent for the privilege of being the flashiest man in the sky. Then Yuxing passed him, flying on a sword. The boy's jaw dropped so hard it was a medical event. He stared at Yuxing's silhouette shrinking into the distance and thought, what model of flight gear was that? No exhaust port, no visible propulsion. Design he had never seen in his life. He hammered his pack to maximum speed, fell further behind and screamed internally that this was impossible. Yuxing, completely unaware he had just broken a man's spirit, was doing mental accounting. Golden Core initial stage unlocked. Sword flight unlocked. Vehicle expenses eliminated. He was also turning over something more interesting. His Taoist cultivation was syncing cleanly with this wasteland body. Could it be that the cultivation roots were embedded in the spiritual sense itself, and his transmigration had simply landed him inside a compatible vessel? He filed it for later. He landed in front of his destination and told himself, no more guessing. Time to handle business. The boy landed right behind him and ran inside the door like something was chasing him. Yuxing watched him go with a mildly startled expression. Inside the scavenger's tavern, 2 girls greeted them at the entrance, one announcing the welcome and bar service, the other specifying that C-rank scavengers and below had access to the first floor, while A-rank and S-rank scavengers were welcome to proceed to the second floor VIP room for personal assistance. Both men registered this information. Both men also registered the 2 girls delivering it. The boy, walking in with quiet ambition, ran his own internal tally. Currently ranked 211. Upper tier C rank. 1 more year and A rank was basically a formality. 1 more year and he would be walking up those stairs without a second thought. Yuxing walked straight to the bar and ordered a Wasteland dark beer and a hunter's meal. Set A, from the bartender, Hua. Hua lit up. Long time no see. Yuxing finally showed up. Here to turn in a mission? He poured the liquor from the barrel into the glass using his ability without touching either, entirely out of habit. Yuxing sat down and confirmed it, then added that Hua's skills were genuinely top tier, and it was a waste to be using them in a tavern. Hua set the food down and started on another drink, unbothered. He was old, he said. He liked this world. Yuxing, on the other hand, had been busy. 5 beastmen alone, a 2-star solo mission above his rank. That was not nothing. Yuxing, eating, waved it off. Mid-tier C rank, number 360 on the board, completely broke. How was business, Hua? The boy, who had sat down directly next to Yuxing because of course he had, processed what he had just heard and nearly fell off his stool. 5 beastmen alone. 2-star above rank, solo. That wasn't something a C rank did unless they had either a serious special ability or very serious equipment. Hunso told Yuxing he could drop the Poverty Act. The reward on that last 2-star wasn't small. $5,000. Yuxing said Hua, his captain, 30%. That's what he kept. Yuxing kept going. He wanted to try a 3-star mission next. Anything worth recommending. Internally, he had already moved past the money. Core crystals were the actual objective. More beastmen meant more crystals, and more crystals meant more artifacts and preparations before Ancestor Wutong eventually tracked them down. The sect's disciples had barely survived the last disaster. The cultivation hadn't fully recovered. There was no margin for being underprepared. Hua patted his shoulder and delivered the bad news. C-rank scavengers couldn't take 3-star missions alone. Regulations. The boy beside Yuxing had been connecting dots this entire time and the final one just clicked. That captain taking 30% had to be from the S-rank Twin Leopards team, which meant this guy, this broke C-rank at the bar eating a hunter's meal, was affiliated with one of the most powerful scavenger outfits in the Wasteland. He made a decision. He leaned over, smiled, and introduced himself. Wasteland Lions Scavenger Team, C-rank, number 211. The Wasteland Flyer. Name was Litian. Lu Xing ran the numbers internally. The Western Lions were the #1 scavenger team, 190 members. One of their own was volunteering to pair up with his 2-person squad. He shook hands. Just an unremarkable C-rank underdog. Lu Xing. Li Tian told him to quit being modest. He had heard everything, fully impressed. With the two of them together, a 3-star mission was completely doable. Hua raised a hand and pointed out, immediately, that no 2 C ranks still could not accept a 3-star mission. Minimum team size was 3. A girl appeared at the bar at exactly that moment and asked, softly, if they were still looking for a third. Letien's higher cognitive functions briefly went offline. The girl caught herself and apologized for not introducing herself sooner. C-rank scavenger, Thorned Night Cherry Team. Her name was Yua. Letien's hand was already extended before she finished the sentence. Of course she could join. Welcome aboard. He was Letien. She could call him Tian. Lu Xing turned to Hua and said, team assembled. Find them a mission. Hua said he would look for something manageable. Lu Xing asked for high difficulty, lots of beastmen, and preferably a boss. Hua grabbed his own hair. Liu Xing had, he noted, the exact same death wish as his captain, but as it happened, there was one difficult free submission that had come in recently, posted a full day ago with 0 takers. He pulled it up. An entire elementary school class had vanished without a trace during a field trip near the forest. Starlit Elementary. Finding missing children wasn't the hard part. The hard part was the unknowns. The forest had been quiet for years. Since the disappearance, witnesses passing through had reported the forest was full of ghosts. Probably not actual ghosts, Hua added. More likely a beastmen pack had moved in and taken over. But nothing was confirmed. Tian and Yu heard the word ghosts and went pale. Liu Xing slammed his palm on the table and said, that's the one. They were taking it. The mission locked in. All 3 bracelets buzzed with the confirmation. C-rank scavengers Lu Xing, Letien, and Ling Yue. Team formed. Mission accepted. Letien immediately turned to Yue and started backpedaling with the energy of a man who had just remembered consequences exist. There were plenty of other 3-star missions, he said. Perfectly good ones. No reason to drag someone like her into something like this. What if there actually were ghosts? Lu Xing, entirely unbothered, told him what was there to be scared of when Letien was right there with them. Letien pointed at Lu Xing. Exactly. And also, he added quickly, there definitely weren't any ghosts. Hua cut through both of them and got serious. This wasn't about ghosts. It was about time. Those kids had already been missing for a full day. Every hour the odds got worse. They had 12 hours left in the golden window. He laid out the routes, 3 options from the tavern to the White Forest. The fastest meant crossing the Desert of Eternal Calamity and the God Divergency. Option 2 was through Kiyo's Canyon and the Skeletal Beast Winds. Both were crawling with marauders and nuclear beasts. Extremely dangerous. Option 3 went around the outer ring of the Wasteland. Safe, but over 10 hours. With 12 on the clock, Option 3 was barely an option at all. Yue raised her hand quietly and said she might have a solution. She reached into her bag and produced a glowing shrimp. The group processed this. She held the shrimp up, called out a name. Zaolan. She had brought his favorite glacial quill. Come here, and raised her hand toward the sky. A portal tore open above them. Thunder poured through it, and out came a whale. Lu Xing stared upward and asked, was that a star whale? Letien made a sound that wasn't quite a word. He pointed at it and said there was absolutely no way she had named that thing Zaolan. Usei said cheerfully that given its size it was probably just a baby. Lu Xing said it was incredible. Were star whales really the fastest nuclear beast out there? Letien was doing different math entirely. A beast like this cost an astronomical sum. Where had this girl gotten that kind of money? Could she possibly be? He killed the thought before it finished forming. Yusei clarified. Zaolan was a friend. Also, star whales could only fly at altitudes above 1,000 meters. They couldn't breathe any lower. So getting on his back required getting up there first. Letien fired up his jetpack. Yue extended her hand toward Lu Xing. Letien watched Lu Xing take her hand and fly up on his sword while he climbed alone on his jetpack and thought, privately, a great many things. They landed on the whale's back. Letien noted, somewhat surprised, that it was remarkably stable up there. Didn't even feel like they were moving fast. Yue explained that star whales weren't actually fast on their own. They were a little slow even, but they took shortcuts. She told Zaolan to get ready, said let's go, and the whale leapt. A portal opened in front of them. They passed through into something that looked like deep space. Debris scattered in every direction. The laws of regular travel apparently suspended. Lu Xing stared around and thought, was this a spatial distortion or a wormhole? It was genuinely bizarre. He also noted, quietly, a faint trace of evil chi somewhere in the vicinity, something like the aura of a monster refining realm. Close enough to feel but impossible to pin down. Then a portal opened above the White Forest, and the whale came through. Liu Xing landed with Yu. Letien dropped down behind them, and the 3 of them stood at the forest's edge. Liu Xing said the White Forest had always been peaceful. Almost no nuclear beasts. Almost no beastmen. Schools ran field trips here regularly. For an entire class to vanish without a trace was deeply wrong. Yue looked at the tree line and wrapped her arms around herself. The atmosphere was gloomy in a way that didn't match the forest's reputation, she said. It reminded her of an old horror story. Both Liu Xing and Letian turned around slowly. A horror story? Yue nodded. The White Forest used to have a different name, the Forest of Miracles. It had been rich with resources. Dozens of human survivors had built a settlement here. The beastmen whose territory it originally was had been genuinely friendly, and the settlement had looked like it might actually become something lasting. Until one night, when most of the humans in the settlement were slaughtered and hung from the trees for everyone to find in the morning, a scavenger team was dispatched immediately to rescue whoever had survived. The beastmen became the prime suspects. With a few exceptions who escaped, the beastmen were almost completely wiped out, and the seeds of hatred between the two kinds were planted in that single night. The terrifying part was that a ghost had been watching the entire event from a distance. Only one person had seen it, a little girl, running with her rescuer, who pointed back into the dark and said there was a ghost. Letian asked if the girl might have just been terrified. Mistaken. How could there be ghosts in this world? Wuxie said no. That little girl was her captain now. She had heard the story directly. There was no way she had been wrong. Letian's expression shifted. The captain of the Thorned Knight Cherry team. He said, the crazy psychic? Ying? Lu Xing filed that name away and asked, crazy psychic, so she could actually see ghosts. Internally, he was already running contingencies. If there were genuine ghosts, he had tools for that. His great precious sword would sort them out. If there were no beastmen, though, the trip was going to be a waste of core crystal farming time. Yue told them both to stop calling her captain a crazy psychic. She was a spirit seer. There was a difference. All three of them went silent at the same moment. A shadow had appeared behind them. They turned in unison. Liu Xing called it, something's coming. Letian looked closer and said it looked like a student. Quick, after them. They chased the shadow. It ran straight into a door in a building that had absolutely no business being in the middle of a forest. Letian pulled up short and said, why is there a school building here? Don't tell me. Yue looked up and spotted another shadow moving in an upstairs window. Another student. They rushed in. The moment all three of them crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind them. They looked around the dim interior, getting their bearings. Outside, thick vines began moving. They spread across the building's walls, windows and doors, wrapping the entire structure until it was sealed completely from the outside world. The door shut. The building went pitch black. Lu Xing activated his bracelet as a torch and took stock. Door sealed. No signal on the wristband. No way to locate the others. He pushed forward through the debris-filled corridor and opened the next door. Wooden puppets. A whole room of them. Standing still. He called out, who's there? Then immediately felt stupid looking at a bunch of wooden dolls. He had definitely heard something though. He stood still and focused. Behind him, a pale, gloomy hand was silently following his movements. Lu Xing decided this place was deeply unsettling and the priority was finding the others. He turned to move and caught it, a hand reaching toward him. He spun around with his torch. It was a little girl, sobbing quietly. She asked if the mister could take her home. Liu Xing checked his wristband. Not a nuclear beast. No ghost energy he could sense either. He went down on one knee, patted her head and asked her name and how she had gotten separated. She said her class had been doing science work when they ran into a ghost. She had run and ended up here and could not find her way back. Liu Xing steadied her and asked about the other kids who had run with her. She pointed deeper into the building. The ghost had caught them and taken them there. Elsewhere, Letian was shouting both names into the dark with zero results. Then he heard it. A song, coming from somewhere ahead. He followed it, puzzled, and pushed open the door it was coming from. Children, dozens of them, holding hands in a circle, singing, and in the middle of the circle, on the floor, was Yue, unconscious. Letian shouted her name and charged forward with his sword. Every single child turned to look at him at once. Their eyes had gone pitch black with green pupils. Letian did not hesitate. He sliced through them instantly. Their bodies collapsed and unraveled into vines and wood. Puppets. All of them. He dropped Yue's side and told her to wake up. Her eyes opened. She looked up at him and asked if it was Tian. She sat up and said she had no idea how she had gotten here. Letian told her she must have run into the ghost, but it was fine. He had already driven it away. She was safe. He would protect her. His face was doing things he had no control over. Museo hugged him. Letian's brain departed his body entirely. He told her not to be scared, that he was here, that he would stay with her. The Yue in his arms said, hey, okay, and dissolved. The ghost shed the disguise and vines erupted from where the fake Yue had been, wrapping around Letian's entire body before he could process what had just happened, pinning him completely. The really Yue was making her way through a separate corridor, wristband torch on, running worst-case scenarios in her head. No signal, no way to reach the captain, no idea where either of her teammates had gone. She was going to have to find them the hard way. Someone stepped into the corridor in front of her. She called out, "Who's there?" It was Lu Xing. He said her name, sounded relieved, said he had finally found her. Useo pointed sideways without moving a muscle and said, "If you are Liu Xing, then who is that?" The figure that had just called itself Liu Xing turned to look. The real Liu Xing was standing right there too. Both of them stared at each other. Yue looked between them with the expression of someone whose day had already been too long. Nobody in that hallway had any idea which one was real. Both Liu Xing stood facing each other in the corridor. The first one jabbed a finger at the other and shouted, "You fake bastard! Stop pretending and show your real form." The second one punched him in the face and said, "Do you really think I am going to keep tolerating this?" And then, as the first one absorbed the hit, added, "As expected, it's a ghost." He turned to Yue and told her to stay behind him. The first Liu Xing began unraveling into vines, growing upward into a massive shape, and screamed that no, he was the real one. Yue raised her hand and told them both to stop. Both of them froze. She said flatly. She could hear them communicating with each other through their minds. She could not understand the language, but the communication was there. The vine creature said, "We are all real, every single one of us." The second Liu Xing, the one everyone had assumed was genuine, also began twisting and expanding into something monstrous. Yue looked at both of them and reached back into a memory. A conversation with a small pig, sometime before all this, where she had gently told it that it needed to cut back on the eating, or humans were going to have opinions. The pig had replied that it wanted durian and that for a pig it was practically svelte. She looked at the two monsters now and spoke clearly. Ever since she had awakened as a new human, she had been able to read the thoughts of nuclear beasts and communicate with them, but these two were not ordinary nuclear beasts. What exactly were they? Both bodies stretched upward simultaneously, vines spiraling outward, both wearing Liu Xing's face. They said, "What do you mean? What are we? I am your teammate." Yue turned her head and called out one name, "Little Liu." An oink came from behind her. She said, "Time to eat." The pig charged. The two vine monsters barely had time to consolidate before little Liu crashed both of them into the wall simultaneously, and, without ceremony, ate them. Yue watched with calm satisfaction. On the other side of the building, Liu Xing had followed the little girl through corridor after corridor until she stopped at a door, peeked through trembling and said, "This was the place. Please save them quickly, brother." Liu Xing looked through and saw a vast hollow tunnel stretching ahead. Then he cut the girl down in a single motion. Her body turned to vines. He said, "She was neither a nuclear beast nor a ghost, but she was not truly human either. Not the faintest trace of a soul on her. Whatever she was, she had led him here for a reason, and he was going to use that." He released his soul in model form. It slipped forward and ghosted through the tunnel, scanning as it went. At the far end it looked up. Children, countless of them, wrapped in vines like cocoons, heads visible, hanging from the ceiling in rows. Liu Xing's soul noted, as expected. And then, not only children, someone he recognized. A monster emerged from nowhere, assembling itself from vines into Liu Xing's exact shape and attacked immediately with a sword. Liu Xing deflected the strike, then used his soul word to begin cutting the children free one by one. He worked through the cocoons and found Letian among them. He dropped him first. Letian's head hit the floor and he jolted awake, looked around wildly, and demanded to know where he was. Liu Xing's soul told him, inside the creature's digestive system. Get the children out, while the soul searched for the monster's true body. Letian looked directly at the floating soul, registered what he was seeing, and screamed, "Ghost." Liu Xing told him to calm down. This was his ability, summoning a substitute. It was fine. Internally, Liu Xing noted this was the most convenient explanation available on short notice. Letian processed this, looked at the soul in action, and thought, so Liu Xing had already awakened a superpower, as a C-rank scavenger that wasn't expected at all, but here they were. He grabbed his sword, still catching up, and asked, so what exactly was going on here? The vine mesh around them was consolidating, pulling together into something larger, a single massive creature assembling itself from every tendril in the room. Liu Xing, observing from above, worked it out. This thing didn't just imitate creatures it had seen directly. It could read memories from its prey and copy forms it had never encountered firsthand. Letian tightened his grip on his sword and thought, not again. Then Yue arrived. Riding the pig, both Liu Xing and Letian stared. She rode straight past them, pig barreling forward, and in 3 clean passes cut through the 3 vine figures that had begun forming around them. She pulled up in front of them and looked down serenely. Letian pointed at the pig and said, Yue, what is that? That bizarre Darian pig. Yue, perfectly composed on its back, said, Little Yu was also her friend, obviously. Outside the building, a figure materialized in the air. He looked at the vine-covered structure below, with the calm of someone checking on a garden. Cosmic blue energy swirled across his entire body and pooled in his open palm, through which he observed the situation of Liu Xing, Yue, and Letian inside. He said, all the nutrients have been gathered. He closed his fist. Every vine in the building surged at once. Letian, Yue, the pig, Everyone was seized and wrapped simultaneously. Letian shouted that the building was shrinking, demanding to know what was happening. Lu Xing's soul, caught in the mesh along with everything else, ran the logic. The building itself was the monster's true form. It had been the whole time. The structure collapsed inward. Every wall, every corridor, every room compressed and unfolded into a single enormous collective vine form rising from the ground. A giant nuclear tree, roots spreading through the entire forest in every direction. A cocoon-like structure at its base, and hanging from its upper reaches, dozens of fruit. The figure outside floated forward and addressed his creation with genuine fondness. He had spent over a century cultivating this nuclear tree to full maturity just to see it sprout. Every few decades, it had absorbed human nutrients to replenish itself. Now it was finally bearing fruit, and this harvest had collected not only the nutrients of children, but the blood of C-rank scavengers as well. The fruit it bore would be exceptional. He raised his hand toward it and noted, almost to himself, that nuclear trees died immediately after bearing fruit, but they produced dozens at once, so the math was acceptable. Then he noticed something wrong. The fruit was shaking, all of it violently, at once, and then it dried up, every piece gone in seconds. He landed hard and stared. How could the nutrients vanish? He looked around, processing, and then looked up. From the vine mesh, bursting free, came a rope, tied to the end of it, every single child, strung together in a line, with Yua and Letian among them. The other end of the rope was held by Lu Xing, flying on his sword above them. Beneath the whole procession, the pig sprinted along the ground, keeping pace. A figure watched them moving away and thought, how had a C-rank scavenger broken free from a nuclear beast's control? He gathered energy in his palm and fired. Lu Xing shouted a warning as the attack came in, and from the distorted space around it, a punch detonated downward into the floor instead. Lu Xing swung the entire rope of students clear of the blast radius. The pig leapt sideways. Lu Xing threw his whip down to little Lu and told the pig to grab it. The pig clamped the whip in its mouth without breaking stride, the whole rope of survivors now trailing behind it. Lu Xing told them, get everyone out of the forest. Go far. Don't look back. Then he turned around in midair to face the new human alone. The man's power was spatial manipulation, clothing and limbs disappearing into pocket dimensions and re-emerging through distortions positioned around Lu Xing from every angle. Lu Xing blocked each strike as it came, reading the trajectories, then closed the distance in a single burst and sliced the man clean through the middle with his sword. He saw a galaxy inside the wound. It sealed instantly. The man looked at Lu Xing with what was unmistakably genuine interest. He said that even an 8-star convention might not be his match, yet this C-rank had actually managed to wound him. Fascinating, he said, raising his hand. He had not expected the Scavenger Guild to be hiding a talent like this. He asked, who are you? Then he plunged both hands into separate distorted spaces on opposite sides of Lu Xing and attacked from both directions simultaneously. Lu Xing's soul blocked one, his physical body blocked the other, and took enough force from it to be knocked downward. He caught himself and thought, this level of power, and he had never even heard of this new human. There was no clean path to killing this opponent. He sent the distress signal to the captain the moment he had gotten the others out, but even at her top speed, she was over 2 hours away. He had no idea how long he could hold this. The man landed in front of him, watching, waiting, just observing. Lu Xing reached into his coat and pulled out a talisman. He still had 2 left. He activated it, hand signs, full commitment, and his form shifted completely. A giant model materialized around him, wielding an enormous blade on a long handle. The silhouette alone was a different category of threat. The man's eyes lit up. He said, you can transform too. This keeps getting more interesting. He put one hand into a portal beside him and said he would play along. A strike erupted from the ground directly at Lu Xing's position. Lu Xing was already above him. He had crossed the distance in less than a moment and was coming down from overhead. Attack already in motion. The man looked up, genuinely surprised.